Good evening, folks. It's not normally me who introduces these things, but we realised as this is a show with no format whatsoever, we'd get the most form and function-free member of us to introduce
I
it.
nominated you, Dave. I nominated you.
That's right. Becca obviously introduces the normal show, and then in previous years we've done the summer review. So just before I introduce everybody. The difference tonight is we're just going to talk, and it could turn into a really disciplined talk through all the films of the year, or it could be 3 hours on the Queen's funeral. We've got absolutely no idea.
Let's hope it won't.
What I'm wondering though is whenever I try and do a trailer for one of our normal films, I end up with clips of us not talking about the film at all. So I'm wondering if, with this being completely function-free, I'll get a really tight trailer talking about Don't Look Up or something. I don't know. Maybe it'll do the opposite. But anyway, joining me tonight, as always, I'm Dave Bond, as you know, and with me is Chris Byrne and Rebecca Andrews.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. Well,
I mean, Becca will be sort of speaking in unison, as we just...
It's good evening from me, and it's good evening from him.
Well, it's been a bit of an odd year for lots of reasons. One of them would be it's not been quote unquote a COVID year, although we know people out there are still suffering with it. My wife had it again only 2 weeks ago. But in terms of cinema releases, we're now into probably the new normal, in that I don't think cinema grosses have grown quite back to what they were, but they're probably at 90%. But that model of starting to release things on streaming hasn't completely stopped. So there's still a lot of new releases on streaming, more than perhaps had the pandemic not happened. And we know that Cineworld, for example, the British chain, went into administration recently. I do believe somehow they are linked to AMC, the biggest American chain. They're certainly linked to one of them.
They're basically the same company.
Yeah,
I think they're owned
branded
together, aren't
different. Yeah, I mean, Cineworld was a merger of two different cinemas over here about 15 years ago anyway.
But they're still going though, I think.
Yeah,
Is it Odeon? What's the Odeon in the States though? Is it AMC or
I don't know. I don't know. Cineworld was UGC and somebody else. I forget who it was.
I might be able to tell you that because I went on a tour of my local Odeon recently. So please bear with, caller, whilst I find the information.
Okay, UGC used to be Virgin Cinemas. Before that, it was MGM. So they've all been around the houses several times. It's one of the reasons that MGM has a card scheme, because UGC had one. So they've kept
UCI was one.
UCI and UGC, I think, merged. I couldn't think of the name.
So yeah, Odeon Cinemas Group is owned by AMC Entertainment Holdings.
Okay. So we're in this
AMC Theatres, there we go.
We're in this year where we probably could have done a summer review, but I still don't think the movie business has quite recovered. Now, it could be, genuinely, I'm getting old and I'm starting to look at films and go, not as good as they used to be, which I hope I'm never going to do. But there are trends in it all that I'm not enjoying. And, it's just come to this point where, because of streaming, because of us all not going to see the major release every week, we're all seeing different things. So a list of what I've seen will not correspond with a list of what Becca's seen and a list of what Chris has seen. So we're just going to have a general chat. But we may sort of just go on to our year more generally, because obviously it's been a big year for Chris in some ways, and it's been a big year for the world in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, are we still kind of living in limbo post 2020?
I think so, and one of the reasons I say that is trends take a while to play out. So if you think two things, firstly, streaming deals would be done far ahead of time. So for example, the first new film I saw this year was Don't Look Up. The film I just mentioned in the intro a minute ago, the Leonardo DiCaprio film about is it an asteroid hitting Earth? It's something like that.
Yeah.
But it's an Adam McKay film, and it's kind of a satire, as per The Big Short, about how people's attention spans are so short that you can actually warn them you're all about to die, and they'll barely look up from their phones. And it's all about how we market it for like TV views and keep people watching by being positive and stuff like that. Well, Don't Look Up. It may have come out before Christmas. I don't know, but I watched it on New Year's Day. Well, the deal to put that on Netflix with one of the biggest stars in Hollywood of male actors and female, with Jennifer Lawrence, and a very strong cast backing them like Kate Blanchett and so on, that probably was made during COVID. So there are films like that, The Lost Daughter, Red Notice, films like that would probably have come out in movie theatres. And they didn't. Cruella Cruella went straight to streaming. I mean, that's Emma
Oh
Stone.
yeah, it went straight to Disney Plus, didn't it?
No,
Yeah.
that had didn't that have a theatrical release though?
A lot of
sure
the well, when I say they go straight to streaming, apologies for my misspeaking there, because not necessarily straight. Glass Onion, for example, as far as I'm
Yeah, I was
concerned.
about to cite that actually. It may have had like a limited theatrical
Yeah,
release.
forget limited releases for like awards consideration or previews or whatever. If their broad release is Netflix, it's a Netflix film as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, Don't Look Up was a Netflix film. So there's that. The other thing is just trends in general. In that we were watching films in 2009 and 10 that had real script problems, and that came from the writer's strike, which was 2007. So I think some of these things take a while to play themselves out. And when I look through the list of like great or notable films I saw on the big screen this year, although I saw quite a lot, it was fairly limited.
Yeah, nothing that blew you away.
No, I mean, you got the usual Marvel slate, and if anything, that was busier than normal. And we'll talk about Phase 4 later, I'm sure, because I've got real problems with Phase 4. But you take that away, and then, alright, you got the Batman, but that was more in the spring. And suddenly I'm looking through a list of, like, smaller films, because I wanted to go to the cinema. So, I'm looking at... Top Gun's are not obviously a notable exception, but right in the middle of the summer, I'm going to see stuff like Men, the low-budget British horror film with Rory Kinnear in it, and I'm also seeing things like the George Michael documentary, Freedom Uncut, and like Elvis was a much, much bigger release than it would be in a normal year, in my opinion. So it's been a really, really strange year. Really strange.
Yeah, it's been an odd one, hasn't it? I think definitely.
I think I think we've got the confuse. Obviously, COVID has its effects with the pandemic and whatnot, and that's going to change the way they've looked at things like streaming. Now it's given streaming platforms a big boost, and I think the market's still trying to like figure it out. And I think this is kind of partly what we're seeing now, because while we're not sure what kind of works and what's a hit and what's not, because it's all very good, because a lot of people will think, oh well, I'll wait till streaming, because some have had simultaneous releases, like they've been like released in theaters and going straight to streaming, or like say the Glass Onion, say for example, a lot of people, myself included, would probably go, well, I could see it in the cinema, but it'll be out on Netflix in a few weeks, so I might as well just wait for that.
Which is
pretty
much what I did. And
I think it's pretty much what we all do, especially if it doesn't come to a cinema near you. Then,
it's muddied.
If you
it
do
didn't.
subscribe, then...
Yeah, it's also muddied by the fact that the streaming platforms are also fighting for their place. So we know, for example, although Disney overall makes absurd amounts of money, Disney Plus is still losing money. So that will influence them trying to build their own content, because you've got to remember, we're in the UK, where we're getting things like, I pick an example, not necessarily a high profile one, but things like Only Murders in the Building. Well, that would be on Hulu in the United States. So if you look at Disney Plus, just the one platform, they're paying to run two platforms, Hulu and Disney Plus, with all the sort of front end work on putting their interfaces up, with the content split. And really, their new stuff is like Star Wars and Marvel. That's it. So it's losing money. So it's no doubt that they're going to start saying, well, Cruella can go straight there and maybe people will buy a subscription.
It's turning into sort of a tentpole as well, isn't it, for streaming? And also Netflix, I'm not prepared for this at all, unfortunately, but Netflix made headlines previously this year that they kind of lost subscribers, or perhaps weren't gaining them perhaps as quickly as they were in previous years, even during the pandemic, which I think that's significant in some way, shape or form.
It's very significant, because now they're going for platforms where you can pay a $5 and like have adverts, and you think, well, that's just TV, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just trying to get people in.
Well, we're going to add up all our platforms and still be paying what we were paying for cable.
But it kind of always feels like inevitable, though, doesn't it? You feel like, right, okay, we'll just sort of, everything reverts back to like how things are, like,
it used to be. Yeah, I wonder if we're now coming full circle, because obviously everything's fragmented these days. Well, not very many, I certainly don't, but many people perhaps maybe of our generation certainly don't watch a lot of live TV. I know, Dave, you watch a lot of sporting events like Formula One and such. But yeah, I wonder if things are now becoming so fragmented that they're actually, the snake's eating its tail and it's kind of coming full circle.
Well, I mean, to use a sporting example, I remember years ago, obviously, football, soccer, as some of you will know it listening, went to, or English, Premier League, was formed and put straight on Sky behind a paywall. And they decided, the powers that be, that this is anti-competitive and unfair, so we need to break it into several packages. Well, any thought that that would mean, great, some of it might be on terrestrial TV, immediately went away, and now you've got to buy 3 different streaming services to watch it.
It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Yeah,
just makes me glad that I don't have to bother with that. I'm not really into football, so
yeah,
it's I don't have that issue. Sorry for everyone who does, but
yeah. So I guess a good place to start talking about films that have, or content that's sort of straddled the divide. We've sort of had the second half of Marvel Phase 4 this year. And if we look at television, I'll do television then the films. The television series have been Moon Knight, Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. And the films this year have been, I mean, No Way Home was just before Christmas, but it's been Doctor Strange, Thor and Black Panther. And that to me is piss poor output by and large. I don't know what you guys made it for.
In terms of quality.
Yeah, in terms of quality, definitely. It's a bit...
It's too much. It's the head guy being spread far, far too thin. And it's just a welter of content that loosely goes together. It follows a year last year, which was deeply dodgy. I mean, I thought The Eternals was appalling. And I think, if I look at the 3 seasons series this year, for me, and only for me, I know people will vary, Moon Knight was at least interesting. Miss Marvel and She-Hulk I thought were both terrible. On the films, just for me, I thought Doctor Strange was okay. I thought Thor was terrible. And I thought Black Panther was okay.
And
I think probably Black Panther was probably the best of the bunch.
You haven't got the big hit, have you?
No.
Yeah. I mean...
Sorry, go on.
No, you finish, go on.
No, go on, carry on.
Well, yes, I was going to say I haven't seen any of the TV shows because I've just it's kind of like with the films as well. I've not even seen Black Panther just because I've kind of just lost interest. Now, partly is because of,
what happened,
life changing.
Yeah, and your life changing.
Yeah. Priorities take a bit step, and you think, do I really need to see it? You tend to sort of seek out the films that you generally want to see, and I found with Marvel, it's like, I can wait. I can wait. I can wait to see when it comes on Disney Plus when we decide to have it. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'll catch it whenever. I'm not jumping at the gun. The
thing with Marvel for me is they're trying to be the powerhouse behind the Disney Plus brand. So they're trying to do television, they're trying to do films, and they're trying to increase diversity. And you will not hear me say a word against diversity in principle today, or complain about the contents of the film because of diversity or wokeness or anything like that. But the effect it does have is Black Widow, last year admittedly, was a massive tentpole release, helmed by a woman who'd done a couple of films, none of them big. Eternals was done by an art house director not suited to the material at all. Then you get Sam Raimi doing Doctor Strange, which is just the sort of person you don't think they would hire these days, but they did. Then you've got Taika Waititi, who everything's a fucking joke. And it's just such a mess of different tones presented in a homogenized way, but actually quite different under the surface and not in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it mostly is because the issue with that is that it's been with Kevin Feige, it's been stretched thin, always had to liaise with other producers who probably don't have the same eye or attention to detail as he does. So you probably get uneven things like the stuff with Eternals, like a fairly new director. Like, well, Captain America, Winter Soldier, you wouldn't have thought that film would be made by by the directors who made it at the time.
True. That's true.
No, definitely.
And to be fair, I will just interrupt to say my comment on her relative lack of experience in suiting is based in hindsight on the end result. Yeah, it's based on the end result. If the Eternals had been amazing, I would have gone, what a wonderful idea that was.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's easy to sort of do it in hindsight as well.
Yeah,
but then also, none of us are in the room. I mean, like, I mean, to be fair, on the Russos, they did have a lot of experience elsewhere in terms of TV and things like that. Yeah. So they were like experienced behind the scenes, and they probably pitched really well, and plus also they had Kevin Feige, a lot more attention to detail. Plus you had Guardians of the Galaxy that year as well, James Gunn. You would have seen him as a bit of an offshoot director. But back then Marvel, it didn't really matter about. Well, it did matter about the director, but they didn't need a hot shot director.
No,
they didn't need like the biggest name. It was just like, someone who is on board with our vision, and someone who could be do some interesting stuff, rather come up with some neat ideas, but are willing to sort of like stay within like the confines of the universe. And that's why Edgar Wright didn't work out with that man.
Absolutely, but sometimes the end result conversely confuses me, because I look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm only going to refer to one shot. I could refer to a lot in it, to be fair, and I broadly I quite enjoyed it. But the director on it, I don't know if she was showrunner as such, but she directed it off, was Deborah Chow. Now, far from going, well, what's she ever done like this? You look at her TV, and it's not bad. She's got quite a wide, diverse experience, and she did some episodes of the first season of The Mandalorian as well. And yet, through quality control, did you ever see Obi-Wan Kenobi?
No.
There's a shot in it where they're trying to get past. He's with a very young Leia, and he's trying to get past like a checkpoint that is like effectively an electric fence, right? And he's on foot, so no problem. And after a big fight, when they walk around it, and it's like, we could have done that anyway, because we got a wide shot. It's a bit. Do you know what it reminded me of? At the end of Blazing Saddles, where they put up a toll booth.
Oh gosh.
And they've all got to pay like 10 cents or something to get through this toll booth, when there's like nothing but desert either side of it. It was just like, how did that get through quality control?
How did this pass muster?
Oh, it was terrible.
Just hearing about it kind of reminds me a bit of the Nicolas Cage film that was out this year. Is it Unbearable Weight of?
Are you on about them climbing over the wall?
Yeah, and he's like, I could have just walked. But at least that was like intentional for the joke as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I saw. Phase 4. We won't go on about it too long. But if we think of the two franchise big hitters this year, you got that and Star Wars. And forget animated content or anything, because I haven't seen it, but Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor were the most obvious releases this year, and I thought they were both okay. Andor got all the raves. I was actually a bit bored by it, but some of that was I didn't really want an Andor spin-off anyway. My interest was limited.
I thought it was fantastic. Conversely, I think it was, for me, I think I really dug the like the spy thriller elements as well. I mean, as much as kind of immerses himself in that kind of really 70s grimy, worn, lived in Star Wars. Sort of the world, obviously, but I kind of love like the spy thriller aspect of it as well, and the sort of conspiracy theory kind of themes going through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of TV this year. Yeah. So for me, that was probably the 1% that I saw.
I thought it was. I could see how people would love it, and
And I quite rate Diego Leone anyway.
Yeah.
Away from Cassian Andor character, I quite rate him as an actor anyway. So I'm a little bit.
And the prison
very
stuff.
sensitive spectacles.
I love the prison stuff as well, and the prison break element of it all. I just thought like. We're seeing things, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was a bit like this. They retooled the scripts at least once, but they also retooled the format. It was going to be a film, and I think it would have been a pretty good 2-hour film if I'm honest, but it wasn't. It was 6 episodes. Or 8
they
episodes
chopped it up into a series.
And there was a lot of filler in it, and it had a lot of this out of the mouth of babes bollocks as well. Like little Leia was the wisest person in it. which seems to be a bit of a strange Hollywood trend at the moment. But
the wise
the leading man's normally a fucking buffoon.
Yeah, it's a bit of a well-worn trope, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still need to see the Kenobi series actually. So.
But on back on Marvel just briefly, I don't want to be too hard on the Black Panther sequel, just because of everything they went through, and what they effectively did was try and take the plot and say, well, how would they all be reacting if T'Challa wasn't here? So, and it was clearly hard for them filming the scenes at the start where he dies. He dies early in the film. That's not really a spoiler. The character's killed off as well as the actor, having passed away. And where they have to announce he's died, well, if the actor hadn't died and had been written out, that would have looked clunky. This strange off-screen sequence they've got to do to get rid of him. But under the circumstances, you could see it written all over their faces, and they did their absolute best with it. And they did create, it's not called this, but their version of Atlantis that was well created. So Ryan Coogler still maintains all of his talent, but Letitia Wright was never meant to lead the film, and it's kind of a qualified success for me.
Yeah, just kind of like under the circumstances.
Like, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it still was. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. But the running time was like. I mean, I'm going to see Avatar at some point, and I'm looking at the running time, going like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a comedian side time, isn't it?
I'm looking forward to it just purely for the spectacle, but again, it's like I know I'm going in not good expecting Lawrence of Arabia. Do you know what I mean? I literally am going for literally the visual spectacle and nothing else, because I'm not expecting anything else to be that decent or that worthy of my time.
No,
and it's like over 3 hours. Like, come on.
And it's a strangely small. I was reasonably positive about it, so I'll stand by everything I said in our Christmas commentary, where I talked about it for about 10 minutes. I'll stand by all of that, but I started sort of saying, well, let's see how it settles, because I've just been wowed by a spectacle. It is quite a small film, strangely. I mean, you think in the first film they're at a full-on war with the whole human contingent there, and in this one they're fighting one gunboat. You know, it's strangely small, but it is worth seeing. I mean, in terms of sort of big box office, big sort of tentpole releases this year, we're thin outside of that. I mean, you're really looking at some sort of smaller, quirkier releases that found an audience, like, well, the Nicolas Cage film, also The Northman, which we can talk about. Top Gun Maverick is the obvious one. Elvis and probably The Batman. They're the sort of biggest films outside of the main tentpoles this year.
Definitely. Well, speaking of Lawrence of Arabia, didn't that receive a big 4K restoration this year with its 60th anniversary?
I don't know if it was restored this year. I bought a 4K version of it last year, so whether it was restored since, because that does happen. You buy the 4K version and then they say remastered, and you're like,
and they say we're going to remaster it.
I've just bought this. So yeah, I've got a version.
I remember going to see it during the restoration. I think back in I want to say maybe it was during the London Film Festival 2012, so a long time ago.
That was the year I watched it. Yeah, I watched it on the big screen that year.
Literally in its entirety, you know, all intact. About 10 hours it was. It was amazing.
It's about the same length as Gone with the Wind. It's about the same.
Yeah, it's about
3:45, something like that.
Yeah, it was epic. But it was beautiful to see.
Never seen a better looking film. I guess the one attempt to sort of launch a franchise this year was Uncharted.
Do you think that will become a thing? It's one of those things like video game movies. It's difficult. Sometimes they pick up. Obviously, we've had Sonic 2. We've got Mario coming out next year. Video game movies rarely do well from small screen to big screen. Do you think Uncharted will become a thing? Do you think it will launch a series?
I need to look at its box office. I'll tell you what, I'll do that now. I'm gonna look. I'll give you some opinion on the film in a minute. Did you see it, Chris?
Yeah, I saw it.
Do you want to talk about it a bit while I look up its box office?
Have you played it as well? Have you played the series?
It's quite amazing how, like, you take a video game that is very heavily influenced on a movie aesthetic, you know, and you completely just balls it up. Like, you know, an Uncharted movie should be one of the most easiest things to fucking do. You know, whether the movie's actually that good or innovative or
It will always
whatever.
feel derivative
Same with
because
Assassin's Creed as well. That had like huge cinematic aesthetic as well, and we all know how that turned out.
well,
But what you really want is like, you know, like a modern studio like Indiana Jones.
which
Basically.
will always be
That's what it tried to do, wasn't it?
that will always
Unfortunately.
be its critical fall down, because Uncharted is the video game version of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So if you put it on film, the reviews will be, well, we've already got one of these.
Yeah, and then that's the bind you're in. But I think you have to just embrace that for what it is and just go like, yeah, well, you know, like where's your new indie anyway? You know, and well, yes, we have Indiana Jones 5, but he's an 80-year-old man who's probably going to get killed off in the next one. So, you know, this could be a way of like, you know, of scratching that itch for people who like those kind of movies, because like what else is there to offer?
Yeah. I mean, in broad terms, for anyone who's played the video games and not seen the films, I've only played 2 of them. I kind of stalled on the 3rd one, but I played the first 2. And Sully being significantly older than Nathan Drake matters, and him having met him at about 15, which is covered really in the 3rd game in detail, matters, because he's kind of a bloodshot father figure in that he's not necessarily the best interest, not necessarily for the best reasons, but there's a generational gap between them and their backgrounds and everything else. Well, although Tom Holland is probably only half the age of Mark Wahlberg, they meet in this film, so he's already a fully formed adult, and the differences between the characters are too small. So you've got Mark Wahlberg and Junior Mark Wahlberg in the film, and not in the way they're playing the roles, but in their basic character beats. And there's a point in the film where Antonio Banderas is saying something all sort of evil, and I was thinking of like Robert De Niro in The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, because I was thinking like, you used to do half decent stuff, sometimes very commercial stuff, but you did half decent stuff, and this is beneath you, even at this stage of your career. It was watchable.
Yeah, he's got way too much charisma to have like a nothing role,
and it
really
is a nothing role. He's not developed very well at all. They did what they were able to do, because Tom Holland is somewhat gymnastic in his background. They were able to add that to the existing Nathan Drake template and produce set pieces that were somewhat Uncharted, but some of them were basic copies. I mean, there's a bit, I think it's Uncharted 2, where you climb up the outside of it. I can't remember if it's a bus or a train carriage. Well, that's pretty much in the film. I'm sure it is anyway, I might have misremembered that. There's also a sequence, and I can't remember if it's game 3, but then that would be later in the game than I've played, surely, unless I'm just aware of it. Like a set piece on a plane. And it's a bit like the 2018 Tomb Raider film, in that they just took that rebooted video game, took set pieces from it, slightly changed the backstory, and voila.
Yeah.
I don't know. It did 400 million. So that's on the cusp for me. That's a possible. But I mean, they brought in Ramin Djawadi to do the music, and he threw away most of the music, which is quite iconic for game fans. So
yeah, I was quite surprised at that, actually. I was expecting to hear the majority of classic themes, and I was like, oh, I mean, the music was still good. But I was just like, what? Okay, but no, he still did a good job, though. But yeah, I was a bit shocked by that.
I mean, the main thing I took for it, and well, I mean, I'm struggling to remember much of it now. But a lot of the film was like everyone like backstabbing each other. You don't know who to trust, whose side's on, and that kind of stuff gets played out way too much in this film. It just kind of, it just kind of got tired, and you kind of like by halfway through you're not kind of liking anyone, because it's like, well, you just sort of, cheating on everyone, really, aren't you? So why should I care?
And you've got to care about the characters to do that. Yeah. But idiots double-crossing each other left, right and centre becomes a bit meaningless very quickly.
There was like one of the things that did strike me is, this is from like a pure storytelling level. Like the main villain, which is like the not Antonio Banderas, but the henchwoman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who later turns out to be like the villain.
Yeah.
Because spoiler alert, she backstabs him and then somehow has control of all his group and everything. For reasons not she at no point in the film has the upper hand on any of the heroes.
No,
she's defeated every single time, and it's like, well, where's your you're not a threat then, are you? At that point, are you a threat?
Yeah, if basically Goldfinger had been him losing that game of cards for 2 hours, and then at the end having his plot, which we've not heard anything about, foiled, that would be about the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was watchable. I mean, I didn't feel cheated. I think I went in and watched it before like a football match or something. It was all right because I saw that one day. The previous day I saw, because I saw two Kenneth Branagh films in about 2 weeks. I saw Belfast, which is basically him as a child, because he was in Northern Ireland till he was about 9 years old, on the exact timeline of this film, and that was really good. But then he did like Death on the Nile. He'd done Murder on the Orient Express, but everything just felt so lazy this year. All the Marvel stuff was coming out and feeling a strange mixture of boilerplate and experimental, which was odd. And then you had like Death on the Nile, which seemed to cut out a load of plot and a load of characters, and just went, yeah, this is what happened. And it was just like, can you not be bothered? Were you just contractually obliged to do this?
Well, because it didn't, because it changed like the plot of the
I don't
actual
remember.
film.
I don't see. This is months ago now, and I've seen it once. It had a good cast again. French and Saunders in it, strangely. Gal Gadot.
Yeah, the cast was really good.
Can't remember. There was a few others in it, but anyway.
Oh, what's his name? The guy who's not casting as anything now.
Henry
Man
Cavill.
from Uncle.
Who?
Man from Uncle. The other man from Uncle.
Oh, you mean not Henry Cavill?
Yes. He was
That guy.
He was in
I'm looking up the
the
cast.
Social Network.
This tells you a lot, doesn't it? I'm looking up everybody. Annette Bening, Kenneth Branagh, Russell Brand was in it and completely wasted. Armie Hammer, that was
Yeah,
it.
that's him.
That's the one.
And they were in about all the shit had come out about him before the film was released.
Yeah.
Letitia Wright was in it. And it had good bits, but I remember watching the original right after, and I was thinking, well, they've cut that whole bit.
Yeah, they chopped this out, chopped that out. But I mean, the cast were amazing. They were all on top form, but it was a little bit like, really?
Yeah. But Belfast was worth a watch. But then I'm looking through a load of things I've almost forgotten. Like, I definitely saw Cruella. Don't remember anything about it except the visuals. I saw Being the Ricardos, which was about Lucy. You know, Desi Arnaz and Lucy.
Yeah, I really wanted to see that. I think that was Prime, wasn't it? I think.
Don't remember a thing about it. It was on Prime.
Oh no!
And then I went to say Cyrano, which was
not even it had Silver from
no,
Skyfall in it.
don't really remember it at all. Then I went to see Cyrano, which was pretty good. That was Peter Dinklage as Cyrano de Bergerac. But it's all like, oh yeah, that wasn't very good, and oh yeah, I remember that. West Side Story, I didn't really like.
I loved that. See, I thought that was fabulous. I mean, obviously the original was a classic, but I think that was a very good adaptation. Obviously, that some of the songs were in the wrong place, and one thing or another, a few minor changes, but otherwise, I enraptured throughout.
More on abject laziness later.
Sorry.
Yeah, then we saw the Batman, which we did review separately, and that was like a drink.
We liked that, didn't we? Broadly.
That was a drink of water after a fucking drought. That really was. Because even Don't Look Up was nothing like Adam McKay's other sort of satirical works. It was quite lazy, although I enjoyed it. Like Red Notice was a really piss poor action film, and it was just like
I don't
everything.
think I saw that in the end.
Well, Red Notice is so Netflix though. That's the thing.
It is. It's just like Extraction or something. It's written by algorithm.
But then I would say the same about The Grey Man. I mean,
Yeah.
solid action film, a bit like Mission Impossible, where the stunts were clearly taken from, well, they weren't clearly taken, that's a bit harsh, were highly influenced by other films.
I saw that and remembered nothing about it.
You know,
I mean, that's the
it's
thing.
a solid action thriller, good,
Like-
good cast, good performances, but yeah, it's kind of almost
The Grey
actually
Man.
right.
That's the thing, Becca. Like The Grey Man, that is a film that like if anything, should be like, oh, this is going to be fun. You know, it might be a bit silly or whatnot, but you know, at least it'll have like a really good fun energy about it. And like on paper, you know, he's got a great cast. Yeah, it's got a quirky humor. It's got like a huge amount of action set pieces. And you think, yeah, I could really get behind this. But when you watch it, it's just kind of a, yeah. And I don't know what it is. I think it's something about like just like Netflix. I mean, like we've just spent the past half an hour trying to remember stuff about films we've seen this year, and it just seems to me like the quality. I think a large part of the quality is just how overwhelming
diluted.
And how.
Yeah.
If it's not only that, it's because it's like comes out on Netflix. It's all very much like, all right, watch that next. All right, watch that next. It's not a lot of thought going. No one really sort of. It's just. Well, I think I've said this previously. It's all just content. It's just like, you know, had we seen The Grey Man in the cinemas, would that have played differently? I don't know. Had it been made for cinema, would it might have played. You might have come out with a completely better film. Who knows? But because
I don't remember it, honestly.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. I mean, like, looking at it now, I'm thinking, should I give that enough watch? I mean, because it kind of looks like it should be right up my street, but.
I remember back in the early 90s when Smith and Jones, the comedians, had their sketch show, and they appeared in a sketch on an episode of Did You See, which was like a TV review show. And they were asked about all these shows, and it turned out they hadn't seen any of them. And they had excuses like, oh, I forgot to set the video and things like that, right? And I feel like that our review is a version of that. It's like, well, I saw it, but can't tell you nothing about it. I did see a couple of gems in the sort of early part of the year. I'll sort of name 4 of them, and we'll see if you've seen any of them. I saw
Morbius.
Eh?
Morbius.
Oh, fuck. Was that this year?
Yeah.
When was that? Let me have a look. Morbius. Yes, I did. No, that's just
Not
outside.
even
That's just outside the first quarter of the year. Sorry, that's right down below what I was going to mention. I saw 2 very similar, quirky British films about like quite eccentric characters. I saw The Duke with Jim Broadbent, and
That was a brilliant film.
yeah, that was fantastic.
That was lovely, especially as you need to watch Doctor No towards the end.
Yeah, because basically it's the painting in Doctor No that's been stolen by Doctor No that Sean Connery has a quick look
There's a
at.
theory. There's a fan
It's
theory
the
about
story of the bloke who stole it, and he's just this ordinary sort of.
that. It's based on a true story as
Yeah,
well.
he's a guy from the northeast of England who basically spends his life arguing he doesn't have to pay his TV license. And I think his wife
It's
is
typical
Helen
British
Mirren.
underdog type
It's
film.
fantastic. But talking of British underdog stories, literally 2 days after that, I saw The Phantom of the Open.
Oh, yeah, no, that is an underdog story.
That's
Also
not...
based on a true story.
Now, on Set the Tape, it wasn't a particularly fertile year to write about films, but we write these short little bits on our films of the year, and I wanted The Batman, but somebody had already taken that. But I took 2, and one of them was The Phantom of the Open. And again, it's a true story about 1976. This guy, good family man, nice bloke. The film doesn't paint him as thick, but he's painfully naive. Like, he watches golf on the telly, and he's like, I could do that. Right? It doesn't even
It
occur.
strikes me as a sort of like Eddie the Eagle type of it's that kind of narrative. It's probably wildly different. I wasn't there at the time, but it's that kind of narrative.
Yeah, no idea that like golf is an insanely technical sport, even to sort of construct your swing. And he enters like qualifying for the British the Open Golf Championship that year. And they sort of, but it's made a bit like the Eddie the Eagle film. They kind of over-egg the villains of the establishment trying to stop him. And so he's going into like tournaments elsewhere with like French versions of his name and like fake moustaches on, and it's fantastic. It's really, really good fun. And at the end, he's just like, I had to go. It was fun. And my kids like learned something about, you know, it's fine to like dream about these things.
Yeah, so it's got a good message to it, isn't it? It's got these films. It's got real heart, good message.
But it's not a message film at the same time.
No, it's not run down your throats. No, definitely not.
And then we got another few streaming ones that were either crap, I don't remember, like Turning Red, which was okay, The Adam Project, which was okay.
Again, I seem to think Turning Red that kind of spent a little short time at the cinema, and then obviously being a Disney film.
It did.
Or it appeared on Disney Plus first, and then
Yeah.
went to cinemas very briefly.
And then I saw things I remember. Deep Water, I think that might have been the erotic thriller with Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas. And they're both absolute twats, so you don't want either of them to achieve anything.
Oh no, not even Ana de Armas. Oh dear.
It's meant to be playing up on like a modern version of the like a.
It's meant to be body heat.
Yeah, like a Fatal Instinct, that kind of thing, like or the Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, wasn't
Yeah, it's
Fatal
trying to bring
Instinct the
back
spook?
the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
Got
Sorry,
through
yeah.
Yeah.
it. Doesn't really work.
I'd much rather watch that, to be honest.
Yeah. But then
That's the better film.
in about a 3 or 4 week period, let's take them a couple at a time. The last 2 decent ones in this period before we go into another period, if you like.
Maybe next year we should do it like month by month or quarter by quarter.
I saw a stream of Boiling Point, the Stephen Graham film.
Oh.
And this is a
that's a good film.
This is a single take kitchen film where the head chef is just slowly fucking losing it, and he's got
There's
like
going to be a
addiction
spin-off series, isn't there? I think.
It's absolutely terrific. It's very short, and yes, I know I knocked it in things like Birdman. A lot of the appeal is look, it's all one take, but it is essentially no trickery, and it's done really, really well. But I also saw around that time, a month or 2 late, King of the Slappers, King Richard, the Will Smith film about the Serena and Venus's dad.
I didn't see that, but it looked interesting.
It's so. He's supposed to. I'm sure he was
Did
involved.
it make you want to go and slap Chris Rock? Is that what you said?
It made me want to. It made me wanted to slap Richard Williams. It was just
Really?
like, well, it showed to me.
Notoriously quite tough, and obviously that's why Serena and Venus are such champions.
Will Smith's brilliant in it, right? Both the girls playing the daughters are both brilliant in it, and they're at different ages, so all the actresses that play them very good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you see, I'm sure he was involved in the film. I might have misremembered this. I'll look it up. But I have a feeling he was like involved in the production of it, in that like it's his story. And I'm thinking like,
No, would he not be like a producer or a
how
technical
can you
advisor
come
or something?
off such a fucking wanker in a film you had control over?
Oh no.
Ego, maybe.
No, I'm
Maybe.
not sure he is now. Unless it's based on his book. It could be that. But it's based on his own work, his own
He didn't come out of
thoughts.
it very well.
Yeah, he's a twat. They get these girls like top trainers, and he's fucking micromanaging and arguing with them. And I know better. And then they get to the Bollettieri school or whatever it is. Nick Bollettieri died this year, actually. He effectively created the careers of Andre Agassi, Monica Seles, and others, but they're the 2 I can remember. And like he's involved on their schedule and like forcing them not to play and stuff like that in certain tournaments. It's just like he's an absolute dick in it. And like if that's based on his work, this man has an epic lack of fucking self-awareness. And I suppose the proof is they were successful, but Jesus, what a dick. But there you go. Yeah. And then right after that, let's deal with opposite ends of the quality schedule. Morbius and the Northman. I saw them within a couple of weeks of each other. Which one do you want to start with, folks? Because I'm sure you've seen.
Well, let's go with Morbius.
Go on then,
Yeah.
Chris. What did you make of Morbius?
Fuck me.
My review is not even Matt Smith can save it.
Like, I think it's quite pedestrian, which is fine. But then, like, all of a sudden, Michael Keaton shows up, like, in a cutscene.
Yeah.
In like in the end credit scene, where it kind of like it just drops the. It's like, hang on, what?
It's I'm putting an evil team together. Yeah.
Yeah, and like okay, but where's this go? So Spider-Man isn't in this universe, is he?
No,
I'm
because
confused.
they've flipped to another alternate universe, haven't they?
But I'm confused. So this film probably was, I'm assuming, was cut to shit.
Yeah.
Because I think Michael Keaton was probably in this a lot more than previously.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters just are like kind of pointless. Like the what's his name, Fast and Furious as a detective.
Yeah, they put we know what you mean. The comic relief, the black guy from the Fast and Furious films, the comic relief.
Yeah.
The last person you would cast as a sober detective. And he is. There's no ticks of him at all.
Yeah, he's straight, sort of like he's completely straight. There's no like quirkiness.
No.
There's no wisecracks. He's very much like deadpan. He's like the straight man, and yeah, that's a very odd thing. But then they give him nothing to do. There's no real character arc. He just turns up, acts like sort of is correctly suspicious,
and that's it.
And that's about it.
Tyrese Gibson, we're on about.
Yes, that's it.
And it's the most predictable thing in the world, because like Jared Harris might as well have a fucking like a bullseye sign on his neck all the way through.
He's a fantastic actor. He is.
But he's going to die. He's clearly going to die.
Yeah,
and you know who he's going to be killed by as well.
Marked for death.
And Jared Leto's got Jared Leto in his like in his sterile, highly scientific lab has a load of bats.
So scientific, it's complete with small flasks and Bunsen burners.
It's a mess, and the thing is, it becomes, we know how method Jared Leto is. Now, whether that's coming across on screen or I just know it, like sending cast members use condoms when you're playing the Joker and stuff, whether I just know it as backstory or it is coming through in the performance, I don't know. But there's something hilarious about someone trying this hard. Like, he was wheeled around in a wheelchair on set. He refused to walk because his character can't properly. And he's doing it in service.
Until he's able to like leap buildings.
Yeah, he's doing it in service of third-rate shit. Watchable third-rate shit, but third-rate shit.
Yeah.
And Matt Smith is never anything other than evil. It's a bit like what's he called him? Die Another Day, the bad guy in that. Like from the moment you meet him, you go, "Oh, sneering, he's evil."
Yeah.
It's really, really bad, and it does feel cut to shit. It feels short, and at the end of the film, they're trying to expand their universe by putting an evil team together when they're the only two people in this reality. Like, who are they going to fight then?
That we're aware of, yeah.
Yeah, that we're aware of at the moment.
It's like Andrew Garfield in this one.
Yeah, but he wouldn't know. He's only just bleeped over to it.
Yes.
From his prison or whatever. So it's 104 minutes. It needed to be 134 minutes, but it needed to be higher quality in either case. It's directed
It's like, all right, we've got Michael Keaton. Let's do something with him.
Yeah. It's just a shame, and it's sign as well that Into the Spider-Verse, which was the animation division of Sony anyway, so almost certainly different execs. That aside, the Spider-Man property is not safe in their hands. They don't really know what they're doing, and they're desperate for like franchises. It's as simple as that. So they've tried to force this, and there is nothing special about it at all, and some of it is like laughable.
Yeah.
But a couple of weeks later, I saw The Northman, which was possibly my pleasant surprise of the year. Because I expected nothing from it. I think, I was probably in the city for something else and went to see this first. And loved every minute of it. It just felt so... I don't know whether it is, because I haven't done the history of this era, but it felt so authentic.
It was kind of that odd balance of huge like epic Gladiator, but also like a lot smaller kind of indie art house movie.
Yeah. It
kind of like drifted along that line there, where it kind of like, yes, it's probably at its heart like the small house indie movie, but it has enough in it to make it appeal to wider audiences, because it's got the basic like revenge aesthetic, like
and it's focus feature. It is an indie film effectively, or a mini major if you like, a bit like Miramax used to be before what happened with them. They've got some sort of old languages in it properly. It's a very grimy film. It's a very violent film, but it just feels very, very authentic. We don't have a lead man who's entirely sort of sanitized for us as an audience.
Mm.
And Alexander Skarsgård, he's always been in good shape. I saw him in like True Blood and stuff, but the shape he's in for this is phenomenal. And another film with Anya Taylor-Joy in, who's just in everything.
Yeah.
And Finchie's in it. Ralph Ineson's got a role.
Yeah, well, he was in The Witch as well, which was Is it Eggers? What's his first name?
Yeah, Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers. Yeah, he was in. That was his first film.
The next couple of things I saw was I did see the Nick Cage film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yeah,
Um,
but I enjoyed that more than I thought. I thought this could be potential swap, and I ended up
I
like,
watched it to see if Nick Cage is in on the joke. That's literally, I had one
yeah,
agenda going to see that. Does Nick Cage know how ridiculous he is now? And he really does.
yeah.
And I loved it. It was great fun.
Because I think you know it when he's able to sort of like, what's Paddington 2?
Greatest
And
film
that
ever
shot is
made.
them like blubbing his eyes out to it.
Oh yeah, that's so fantastic with his daughter in that, obviously.
Mm.
And then I watched a little film about. Did either of you see it? It was a little film, and I can't remember if I reviewed it or not. It was a Colin Firth film called Operation Mincemeat.
I've heard of it.
I thought
but
Becca.
Yeah, I did. I
I
did
thought
go to see
Becca.
it.
I thought Becca might have seen it just because the character of Ian Fleming is in it.
Yes, he appears for all of 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good. It's one of those. I saw somebody, I can't remember who it was, so I'm just going to pinch your words. Somebody described it on social media as kind of like the film that you'd see, maybe like Channel 4 or ITV, Sunday afternoon, on a bank holiday, like with your dad or something like that, or with your granddad. Not to kind of tar everybody with the same brush, but, you know, like my granddad definitely, certainly loved his like war films, like westerns, that kind of stuff, that kind of genre. It's that kind of film. But yeah, no, it was really good actually.
It's a very high stakes World War II caper
It's a very
film.
high stakes. My only criticism would be, but yeah, it's a very high stakes World War II about sort of code breaking, and again based on a true story, larger true story, really fascinating. Recommend reading the book of the same name by Ben McIntyre, who's also written a lot of excuse me, a lot of other behind the scenes books about various World War II, SOE for example, operations as well, and also the film The Man Who Never Was, I believe it might be 50s, 60s. It tells the same story, based on the same story, but sort of it's a remake of, as it were. Operation Mincemeat is a remake of this film. Yeah, my only criticism would be there's kind of like a love triangle, or sort of a love story almost, between Colin Firth's character, and it doesn't really need to be there. I think, as it were, it's a bit over-egged a little bit, to use your phrase, Dave.
It's to give Kelly MacDonald something to do.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, she's fabulous. I do quite rate her, and I'll watch whatever she's in. I could sort of listen. I love her accent. I could listen to her read the phone book. But yeah, I kind of feel like the love interest between those two are perhaps a little bit forced. But Colin, endlessly watchable, always fantastic, whatever reason. But yeah, no, it's a really solid World War II thriller, definitely. Really great cast.
And hello to Jason Isaacs.
And yes, hello to Jason Isaacs. Literally took the words right out of my mouth there. Hello to Jason Isaacs for sure. But yeah, I highly recommend it as well. I think it came on streaming in America before it did over here. But it's now widely available on the home release. Maybe streaming on various platforms. I don't know. I haven't checked.
It's
but
really
well worth
good.
a watch. If you can catch it, definitely.
Disappointment of the year after that was Nightmare Alley. That's Guillermo del Toro, isn't it? We're going to come back.
I didn't see that.
We're going to come back to it. I was so bored during the whole fucking thing.
That was a remake as well, wasn't it? I think.
It was, and it feels like one. It feels like a filmmaking from a different era. But we'll come back to Guillermo del Toro in our lazy, not lazy chat later. Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the best blockbuster of the year, for sure.
Was the highest grossing film of the year so far?
So
until
far.
Avatar takes over.
Avatar will do it, but yeah, it's Maverick at the moment.
Yeah.
But probably the best crowd pleaser, definitely, I would say.
I couldn't believe what they did with it. I mean, it was it Kaczynski?
It's crazy,
was it
especially
Kaczynski who directed it?
A lot of camera effects and very little CGI, and Tom Cruise generally being Tom Cruise, and wanting to go for the authentic experience.
What I liked about it, and we'll cover Top Gun one day probably. Certainly, if they ever do like fast stream a third, which is possible, then suddenly it's a trilogy and we'll do it. But it's still Jerry Bruckheimer, and you're not sure. Joseph Kaczynski, no, he did Tron Legacy.
Yeah.
And he did Oblivion, am I right?
Yeah.
Oblivion I really like, and Tron Legacy's far better than the first Tron. So.
Agreed.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
The screenplay was.
I think we might be the only ones, Dave, but yeah.
No, the screenplay mixed because Aaron Kruger's on it, load of Transformers stuff, and the American versions of the Ringu films. But Christopher McQuarrie's on there, and we know there is no better. Well, there's no better script doctor there is. I know he's best known as a script writer, but we know from the Mission Impossible films, if something's fucked up, he'll fix it as he goes. And what I found incredible about it was, I hated Maverick in the first film. I thought he was an arsehole. I thought the story was incredibly... He's meant to be an arsehole, I think, but like you're supposed to still root for him, and I didn't like it. It was typical flashy Tony Scott. And they have this mission at the end that's meaningless until about 5 minutes before it happens. And then suddenly it's rah, 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 America, yeah, right? This film is all built around a mission. And they've updated Tom Cruise, that he is a respected, seasoned, intelligent man, but he hasn't quite lost that two fingers up to authority. That means his career hasn't developed as it should, but they haven't essayed that as a 50-something man who's just deeply irresponsible. He has irresponsibility about him more than that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he doesn't gel with the establishment of the Air Force.
Yeah.
But it's also part of him, like, I still want to be in the cockpit.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go any further because it means I won't be doing what I want to do. You know what I mean?
The only thing that was strange about it is they got Harold. I don't know if they got Harold Faltermeyer back to do the score or whether they just credited him for repurposing. I know when Kevin Smith did his cop-out film and he wanted it to feel very 80s, he got him to do a new score. So I'm not sure. But the strange thing about it is Tom Cruise is no idiot, and he knows that by and large the 70s critically was a stronger decade than the 80s. So the soundtrack is this weird uneven mix of 80s callbacks and tons of 70s music, which is not when the original film was released. So it's like Tom Cruise wishes Top Gun was a 70s film, I think. I've not been drawn back to it, but I thought it was exceptionally well made. The mission drew you in. The mission is just about hard enough that it's possible he wouldn't do it. The only obvious plot, it's not even a plot hole, it's a plot contrivance. Maverick, I don't think this is any great spoiler. Maverick ends up flying the final mission. And for a vast amount of the film, he's not going to be. He's supposed to be training these kids. Well, if he's the greatest pilot of all time, with the possible exception of Iceman, who is sick in this film, the first question would be, why aren't you flying it? Why does that take 3/4 of the film to come up?
Yeah.
But it is better than the first by a long way, and better than anything you would expect from a Top Gun sequel. And proof, Joseph Kosinski's a better director than Tony Scott.
And I'm just like how much of a role Tom Cruise is on, like his, like the momentum he's got on at the moment.
Yeah. And you know, he's known for his stunts, but you're like, well, it's not Mission Impossible, so will it be as exciting? And you're like, yeah, it's done really, really well.
I think because it's all done with heart as well. Like it everything's just done really. Even like the bit with the Val Kilmer cameo, which you think might be a bit
cloying.
This might not be work out. They find a way to actually make it really
moving.
Moving, respectful.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to the film as a whole. It kind of like assumes a lot from the last film and just builds from it.
And it's not franchised filmmaking. Had they decided to make Top Gun 2 in 1989, well, obviously it wouldn't be the same film because Tom Cruise would have been in his 20s. But it wouldn't have been the same spirit of film. It would have been, let's try and do that again for extra money.
Yeah.
And Top Gun, yes, it's designed to make money. But like you say, it's done with heart. Tom Cruise clearly cares about doing something right with this property. So I was really impressed with it. Did you see it, Becca?
Yes, I did catch it in the end, actually.
What did you think?
I was blown away, really, quite frankly. I went home and then watched Top Gun afterwards.
Yeah.
I kind of did it backwards. No, I was just in... I think Tom Cruise is really, really interesting. I think some of the characters are a little bit... and for me, it was a bit of... again, kind of heavy like nostalgia again, like for the original film. And I kind of love some of the music as well, but I think the technical aspect, that's what kind of really intrigued me the most. I think with Tom Cruise, I find I struggle to describe because there are aspects to him which I think are a little bit strange, not quite all there. But also I think he's really fascinating. He's like sort of one of these last great movie star type people. He really tries to push for, obviously use CGI and effects and that where he can. But he does all these crazy stunts himself. He tries to kind of use a lot of it in camera effects and everything. Tries to aim for like realism, I suppose, as much as you can, or authenticity. I just think it's incredible, like all this sort of aerial acrobatics and everything. Obviously he got to do them themselves, and the thousands of hours that he must have put in terms of like climbing planes and everything. I was just literally, the technical aspects are really kind of what blew me away. But it's one of those films where you kind of plot wise you sort of think, what about it too much, and because I kind of thought I waited a little while before the hype went down, and thought this was just going to be kind of a sort of big nostalgia fest. I was a little bit cynical, might be the wrong word, I'm not too sure, but I sort of thought, is it going to be that good? Is it going to live up to all the hype? Is it just going to be sort of like a rehash of the original? Is it going to be kind of a lot of like 80s, trying to reclaim that 80s machismo? There's a little bit of that, but for me, I might have seen a different film to you guys, I don't know, but it wasn't kind of laid on all that thick. But I say it's currently, as a recording, as far as I can see, Avatar hasn't overtaken just yet, but I can certainly see why it's at the moment the highest grossing film of the year, and certainly by the time Avatar's done, it'll be one of the highest grossing films of the year. I can certainly see why. And maybe a good chunk of that is also Richard Walker seeing it 100 million.
I was going to say it was funded largely from Plymouth.
I think it was. Yeah, there's a chap that we all follow. He's a big movie fan, amazing photographer. He really does kind of make use of Limitless, Unlimited, whatever you think, and he's seen it.
I don't know how they work out the budget. I don't know how they work out grosses when you've got an unlimited card.
Yeah, I don't know quite how that works.
He's probably seen it 27 times and like given the film 27p or something. I don't know.
Probably that's true. Or most of the money maybe goes to tea and coffee on site sort of thing. But no, he's seen it many times. But no, I really enjoyed it actually. And as I say, it was just kind of, for me, I was blown away kind of more the technical aspects of it, and all the aerial acrobatic type shots. Amazing, definitely.
One thing that Tom Cruise films tend to have in common with what is going to happen with Avatar is legs. They don't open massive and then they just have legs. Top Gun, it opened fairly well and then just had insane legs on it.
I think because one of the things I will say that that I've noticed about a movie in a long time is just noticed like how the general excitement, not just on film Twitter or like the YouTube, the various amount of YouTube videos praising it or whatnot. It's actually about like sort of people you find at work, or like people actually like talking about it, going like, oh, have you seen Top Gun? Oh my god, it's so you actually see people who or just in passing just seem generally excited by it, or just like kind of, oh my god, that's so good, I'm going again, that kind of thing. I haven't seen that in a while, and Top Gun Maverick had that.
But what do you expect when Marvel put out 4 films a year?
Yeah.
And Star Wars is only on TV, and the whole business and where cinema sits in our lives as film fans is just totally up in the air at the moment. So, like I say, I was seeing a lot of smaller films, and the next film I saw would be of interest to Becca because it's a sizable role for Rory Kinnear. Did either of you see Men?
I didn't. No, I don't think it even came anywhere remotely near me.
It's a really strange film. This woman who she lives in London in a flat, and she's having an argument with her husband, and he goes up onto the roof and jumps off. He just kills himself, right? So she travels down to, I can't remember if it's Somerset, Devon or Cornwall, but down this way to like rent a cottage and like clear her mind. And all the men in the village are played by Rory Kinnear, and even if they're children, look like Rory Kinnear.
Yeah, I heard about that actually.
And that's all I'm going to say. The
that
film
sounds a bit creepy.
It's creepy as fuck, and the ending is batshit.
No offense to Rory Kinnear, but I'm sure. Ooh.
The ending of it reminds me of the ending of that film Under the Skin with.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's got a really weird ending to it, but yeah, check that one out. And then we've got a load of streaming stuff. The one other thing I'll mention that's topped so many lists this year, but I didn't like it at all, without thinking it was a bad film, was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That was amazing. Oh my god.
I'm ready to hear someone tell me why it's amazing, because I just found it as a chuck everything at the wall.
It's overwhelming. It's one of those films where you need to break it up into small chunks, I think, or it might be an easy
Becca,
watch
tell me why it's great, and Chris, tell me why you didn't think
sorry,
it was.
After you, sir.
In whatever order.
Oh, I'll go. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once is exactly that, and that's why I couldn't get on with it. Because it just threw everything at you, like, hang on, what the fuck's going on? Why does it make sense? Isn't that just a bit... okay, that bit's a little bit too silly, you know, hot dog fingers, come on now. And like, I mean, if we're gonna like
alternate universe,
and yeah, I know, but it's trying to make me feel like, you know, emotional,
yeah,
and then it has, like, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis chewing on hot dog fingers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
it was funny.
She didn't even get her tits out. Sorry, that's a different film.
It's trying to make, like, a poignant sort of emotional beat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, but there's Jamie Lee Curtis with mustard over her face, chewing on hot dog fingers. Yeah. And I'm like, no.
It's obviously standing in for something else, you know. But it's just, you know, she's one of the preeminent screen queens, and she's playing totally against type, definitely in a sort of more a comedic role. And also, it's one of those excellent films. But obviously, it's directed by two guys. But it's when, you know, when those few films, you know, it's got like a sort of mainly Asian cast, Asian lead, and it's also like for the older women as well. Obviously, Michelle Yeoh is timeless.
She's in her 60s. She's got to be close to her 60s now. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's, you know, she's still got the moves.
Still would.
Still would. Yeah.
Moves. Jamie Lee Curtis as well. I mean,
I take some lube with me, but I still would.
You can still kick ass, definitely. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it's so great. It is very overwhelming. I mean, anything like that, any kind of like sensory issues that I majorly struggle with. I very nearly walked out at one point, but I thought, no, I paid 15 quid for this film. I'm gonna go.
£15?
No, I was like, I think it's like 12, 13 in there, somewhere like that. And then I bought some popcorn, so. But that was right. I got to go see this film, and it was in. Where did I see it? Somewhere. It was
she paid £13, but on the plus side, she owns the UK domestic rights to the film.
It was fine. And I think it was myself and like 2 other people, so it wasn't too busy. So I was quite happy they mentioned my popcorn. I broke the code. Apologies. Didn't have my soft roll with nothing in it. But no, I think it was a West End cinema, and they are expensive. Don't do it all the time, but it's a nice treat occasionally.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's one of those films where I come from the opposite end. I can kind of see what you mean, Chris, because that is what it is. Everything everywhere all at once. It's very overwhelming. Especially it's like oh my god, Scott Pilgrim. It's very much an assault on the senses.
I don't like that film either.
Sound everywhere. If the film had been in 3D, that probably would have been a bit too much for me, for sure.
This may be a feeling that disappears, but this is the first year, literally the first year of my life, where I've thought maybe I'm getting too old for it all, because I've seen I'm starting to see the formula in Marvel, and I don't just mean they're formulaic. I mean what they're trying to tell us about the world sometimes, and all these films that are hyped, and I go and see them and I go, you're just trying too hard. You're trying too hard to be clever. And I'm thinking, am I just too old that I'm not concentrating anymore? Am I too old in another respect that I've just seen it all before?
I don't think a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once is trying to be clever as such. It's just obviously it's one of those films that is quite, you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. I mean, it's amazing for a whole number of factors that I mentioned above. But because it does kind of deal with lots of different timelines, and there are various different worlds where they all speak Spanish, or where they have all got hot dog fingers, and where they're all aliens from outer space, or, you know, where they're all just rocks with googly eyes attached. Any number of, you know, infinite things. So you do have to kind of like maybe watch through a kaleidoscope.
You always need to see these things a couple of times.
I think it's trying to be too clever, and some scenes are just silly for the sake of it, like the hot dog fingers. And it is ridiculously silly, and all 3 of us who went to see it did laugh out loud, and I'm sure it's provoked a similar reaction to other audiences. I'm not sure if maybe that was maybe an unintentional laughter, I don't know, but there are comedic scenes, you know, dotted throughout the film. And I'm going to mispronounce his name, I do apologise. Jonathan Kikron, obviously known Short Round, makes a miraculous return to the big screen. He's still got the moves and all, you know. And yeah, so I think it celebrates a number of things. Celebrates obviously, and you got sort of the Asian sort of action movie heritage as well, which is celebrated by, you know, by its 2 amazing leads. It's celebrating maybe like the older action star, the older women as well, who still got the moves, and perhaps play against type or play roles that you perhaps wouldn't expect them to be in. But I don't think it is. It's not one of these. I wouldn't class it in the same respect as like a Marvel movie where it's trying to be clever or it knows what it's trying to be too clever. But you know, I just that's just my opinion, definitely. But no, I do agree with Chris a little bit. It is quite overwhelming, and I think if I haven't picked up on the home release just yet, but if I do, I don't know. I'll wait till it comes down a little bit. It's one of those films where I would definitely break it up into chunks and kind of watch in very small pieces, just because it is a bit overwhelming as such.
Unless I see
for me, it's one of the best of its top films. Sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, you interrupted you.
It's certainly in my top 3 of the year so far. I still haven't seen Decision to Leave yet, but that might be my last film of the year, so I suspect that may slide into the number 1 spot.
I think the thing with films I don't like, unless they're flat out incompetent or I can see a ton of problems with them, I normally owe them a rewatch, and this falls into that category. I didn't jive with it. I've seen it once. Spinning on, what else have I seen? I saw the George Michael doc that he was working on when he died, but I'm the only
I didn't see that. Any good?
Just superb, worth seeing. But I won't say much more about that because it is just a doc, and it's about an artist you either like or you don't. So it's one for them. I walked out of a film this year. Right?
Did you, Dave? Tell us all about it.
And it won't be the film you expect me to walk out of. I'll tell you why in a minute. I walked out of Baz Luhrmann's Elvis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The reason being, my wife likes Elvis Presley. I don't. I think he was fucking dreadful, personally. But there you go. And I don't think.
Did you say I'll see you outside?
I don't think he's dated very well either as an act at all. And he never wrote a note of his own fucking music. So this idea is, yes, I know he was influential, but as an act, nah, it doesn't hold up today. But I thought I'm happy to go and watch that because I'll just watch it as like historical document. You know what I mean? Let's see about his life, right?
Yeah.
Problem is,
yeah, none of it's true.
None of it's true. But anyway,
none of it's true. It's all a lie.
Problem is, I walked in and I'm sat there with a Romanian, no subtitles, and she couldn't understand a fucking word he said. Right? So Elvis is like Elvis is talking to his dad, and he's going, well, and I did the worst thing possible. I started mimicking it. So she then had a fucking laughing fit, right? And we're getting funny looks. And then
oh no! Did you cause a disruption?
At one point, right, my wife, I tuned out for a moment, and then I came back to her. My wife was laughing. And what had happened was, I think I'd forgotten I was in a cinema. I farted, but I farted for about 15 seconds at various pitches. Like, she said it started to die away and then you gave it a bit more effort. And I thought, nothing about this screening is working, so let's leave.
Oh no, did you get your money back?
No, because what am I going to say? I'm leaving because I've just embarrassed myself with a loud fart.
I'm leaving, I just farted, sorry.
No, but honestly, the joking aside, I wasn't enjoying the film. I wasn't enjoying anything about it. It was Baz Luhrmann's look at how camp I am all the time. And it was, honestly, I'm British and I could barely understand a word he was saying. It was just ridiculous. It is like, it's the parody of Elvis Presley. He looks like him, and certain moves, if you look at it quickly, it's like, shit, that's Elvis. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what it is. I think you have to be a big fan. I know a friend. Well, this is my grandma's friend. I don't want to say any more than that. Big Elvis fan, massive Elvis fan. Been to Graceland countless times. Seen all his films. Got all the albums, all the rest of it. Ate it up, definitely. But I wonder if it's one of those things where, like, if you're a bit too close to it. I mean, same with like with Bond or anything like that, or anything that I'm into. If it perhaps like a little bit too close to it, you're always going to have like a little bit of criticism for it. But I don't know if it's one of those films where like you might need subtitles just because.
I think you need to be a fan. I just think you watch it and you go, who cares?
I mean, because I didn't know. Like, all I knew about Elvis, obviously, I knew like all his hits and listen to his music and stuff like that.
I know he died on the tour.
I know he was. Yeah, I know that fact about him. That he was in the army as well. But I didn't know like the relationship between him and Colonel Tom Parker.
Oh, and just quickly, they try and play that as a lovely love story. She was fucking 14 when he met her. Dodgy fucker. Anyway, Chris, what does it remind you of?
It is a bit dodge.
It kind of reminded me of what's the name of that Queen film?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes. It kind of in the way that like
broad brush strokes.
Yeah, broad brush, kind of like a broad celebration
Yeah.
but just glossed over like.
I went to go see
like,
that with a friend who's a massive
like,
Queen fan, and he was like, "Yeah, a bit broad."
I'll give you the example. So it's like I watched the movie and I kind of like I really want to like sort of look into like how that Elvis sort of like comeback special came about and what it was actually like. Because watching it, I was like, "There's no way it happened like that. That's fucking ridiculous."
It's probably on YouTube or somewhere, I imagine.
What, taking him up to the Hollywood sign and yeah.
Yeah, no, but in fact, got Colonel Tom
Holly
Parker,
says hello.
like there, like in the recording studio, like sort of like right, where's the Christmas special? and you're like, Elvis is about to do it. Oh, he's about to do it. It's gonna end on Christmas though, and he just sort of completely blindsided him, like that would happen. Like there's Colonel Tom Parker like bringing on these people, sort of like.
Yeah, would this actually go down?
Yeah, only to be embarrassed. Like they wouldn't notice like the big non-Christmas sets. You know, it just wouldn't work like that.
No.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was a bit too long as well. I mean, I
made it through the comeback special, so I think I saw the majority of it. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it was crap.
But it's always good to sort of compare these things as well. Because I mean, if you look at Bohemian Rhapsody, and then look at during the Live Aid, the concert, and then look at sort of footage for that. Some of it is uncanny, and people can probably spot who were there in real life, can probably spot themselves in the in the fake audience. But so sometimes
well, you can tell the difference between the two. One has HIV in his blood, and the other one fucking doesn't for another 2 years.
When it's real,
they really, really pissed around with the timeline on that film as well. I mean, he came out to his parents on the morning of Live Aid and said, "He is the love of my life." It's like, yeah, all right.
If you say so. Yeah, sometimes they do kind of play it fast and loose with the facts and everything like that. But I mean, there are some times where they get it absolutely spot on, but other times they get it massively wrong.
But yeah, the main reason for leaving was, what's he saying? My wife looking confused and then having a giggling fit I'm taking the piss out of it. But there you go.
That's probably wants to maybe, if it comes on streaming, stick the subs on.
Yeah, watch it again. Yeah, no, I'll watch through it all because she likes his music anyway. But
I find like if you watch interviews with Elvis like on YouTube or whatever, I put the subs on because he had quite a strong accent, I think, and I struggle with that sort of thing anyway. And he does kind of, I noticed like towards the end, like maybe sort of he does kind of descend into like parodies of his own. And so I had to stick the subs on so I know what he's saying, and that sounds really stupid.
I mean, did they cover the fact he used to shit himself on stage near the end? I mean, this guy...
Not on YouTube videos I've seen, but just like interviews with him and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't strain his voice mid-interview.
No.
Yeah. Just quickly to refer to another film I saw that I've written a review of, so we won't talk about it here unless you've both seen it, which is unlikely, as a Mark Rylance film called The Outfit.
No, I didn't.
Where he plays a tailor who's sort of under a bit of mob rule in Chicago in the 1950s, I think it is.
No, it's Mark Rylance, but I will try and check it out.
It's really good.
Is your review on Set the Tape?
Yes, it is. I was very positive about it. Next film I saw, the next two films on my list in terms of what I saw, one theatrical, one on Disney Plus, were both animated. I went to see the DC League of Super Pets and Lightyear.
See, I missed that. That film looked fantastic. I love animation, love dogs, definitely animated dogs. Right up my street, and I missed it.
Okay, well, I don't remember much about it now, which tells you everything.
Oh.
It was fine.
Like majority of the movies came out this year.
And Lightyear does not deserve to have Pixar's label on it.
I need to check that out as well, because apparently there are quite a few Anderson references, especially like 5XL5. And so all of our little sort of Anderson sort of fan group, we were like, "Oh, must go and see this."
Well, it says at the start of the film,
it's on my watch list.
It says at the start of the film something like, in 1995, a film was released. Andy from Toy Story, I don't know if they give his full name or how they name him. That's his favourite film. This is that film, right? So you're supposed to see the film that made him a massive Buzz Lightyear fan. If he'd seen that film in 1995, his room would have been full of Star Wars stuff.
Would he not have been too young, perhaps?
There's just nothing in the film.
Andy was like 8 or something. He was a young lad, wasn't he?
He had to go on these long flights where he'd come back and lose 4 years at a time, so people are getting old and dying around him. That's the only kind of moving idea in the film. They've taken everything about Buzz that's like unique and fun and just smoothed it out into really generic space lead.
I'll probably still check it out though if any purported.
It's not a bad film. It's just not a Pixar standard film.
Speaking of huge budget movies that made like 1 billion, and that are completely forgotten about, which I feel like everyone's completely forgotten about, Jurassic World Dominion.
Oh god, yeah, I did see that. It's not on my list, and I don't know why it's not on my list.
That made 1 billion.
Oh no, it is on my list. It's further down because I watched it on a rip later in the year, so I've got it when it was written.
I totally forgot that came out. Jurassic Park. Forgot that came out.
I've never been a biggest fan of the property, but when Jurassic World came out, for all the criticism, very Force Awakens like criticism, that you just remade the first film here without a lot of the heart, and I bought into all of that as fair criticisms, but I thought if you really want to like reach back and bring back a property, this is about as well as you're going to do it. So I thought Jurassic World was alright. I thought the second one was one of the dumbest blockbusters I've ever seen in my life, fucking auctioning dinosaurs as weapons of war. and then
kind of like
but not only that, you sort of how you operate is you get this like sort of this gun device which you like sort of like laser target to press to kill. You know,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder what else that exists that could do like that she kills anything you point at.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Indeed.
So yeah.
To be honest, I think Jurassic Park the series is kind of on our list to do at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe in the I think that'd be quite interesting to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of the original. It's one of my favourite films
I know.
ever. It's one of those. It's a Marmite movie, isn't it? And I think
most people love it.
It's a generation as well. Like, grew up in the 90s. It might have been one of the perhaps
I was the wrong age when
early
it
kind of
came
cinema
out.
experiences for me.
Yeah.
So I was quite interested in sort of.
Were you pleased with the turn of a character?
Please be more specific.
It's Dodson.
It's Dodson. We got Dodson here. Isn't even the same guy.
Apparently it is, yeah.
Oh, I don't think it is. I can't. My memory must fail me.
I don't remember.
No, it is.
It probably is the same character. Yeah, it's the same guy. Yeah. Yeah, pretty looking.
And I love the fact you got Laura Dern going, God, I was so young. People were going, God, their age gap was awful in the first film. I thought she's always looked about 40.
And they make it. I was going to say they get together at the end, and they're all still wearing the same clothes that they wore 40 years ago. And I mean, it was a very sort of hackneyed plot, a lot of plot, contrivances.
But it had promise.
Lots of fan service, lots of syrupy fan service.
I thought
it was okay. The effects are really good. Like the visuals, the dinos were amazing. But yeah, it's very fan servicey. Definitely.
It was really irritating. Like literally, like they got like literally everyone together, and it was just like it was so self-aware of itself.
Yeah,
like,
it was very pragmatic.
It was almost like the characters almost going to look themselves and go, "Hey, look at us, we're all together."
Yeah, it was the same clothes, just like in Scooby Doo.
Yeah, so the Scream sequel that came out was January for preschool at the time.
You didn't have the balls to kill anyone off.
Yeah.
As well.
No.
Yeah.
Not on top of that, you introduced like even more characters.
Yeah.
And you didn't kill anyone off. You gave new pathos to characters who you
hardly ever know. You hardly get to know.
Yeah.
The whole
You like think of how does that happen? So there's no like emotional stakes at all. You kind of you've taken the concept of dinosaurs roam the earth now, like as a concept, and you've just gone back to an isolated island. Yeah,
but the whole point of the end of the second film was you were setting out, Christ, they're loose now. How are we going to manage with this?
Yeah,
and then
that's what I mean. You just completely sort of sidetrack that into like, oh, we're back on on a singular island now.
Right.
You have one set piece which was kind of fun, with like a villain that pops up for 10 minutes that seemed fun.
Yeah.
The female.
He's not evil enough. He's just not evil enough.
Like that. So yeah, I forget what kind he was, but she was kind of like a.
I don't even remember the set piece, Chris. I'm just taking your word for it. I had fun at some point.
It was the one where they chased around. I don't know whether it was Italy or wherever, somewhere in Europe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he had like sort of raptors like sort of targeted them, kind of thing.
Right. So, like,
But-
No Time to Die with dinosaurs.
Yes, pretty much.
Right, okay.
Oh dear.
Yeah. It's not a good sign for a film when you have to have someone remind you of specific fun you had.
Yeah, this film made $1 billion.
Remember the scene?
This
Yeah.
film made $1 billion worldwide.
Great. Oh, well. Will they make any more? I can't remember how it finished.
Don't know.
Or was it
Yeah,
thumbs up, freeze frame, and that's it? I don't remember.
Do.
Don't remember.
I don't know. It was probably Jeff Goldblum saying something Jeff Goldblum-ly that wasn't like.
Anything to do with the rest of the film.
He just opened up his shirt and was like, "Hey, ladies." I think they sort of tried to wrap everything neatly in a nice little package, but probably left it open.
Well, the first thing they're going to have to do is all go to a clothing
That's
store and
Becca.
see that there's other clothes
Yeah,
available
sorry.
now. So there you go.
This package.
Oh dear. Bullet Train,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoyed this for what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I loved it without thinking it was a great film.
Yeah. I think it was very, very much like Tarantino.
Oh, definitely.
Guy Ritchie kind of action film,
Yeah.
which I was fine with.
Yeah.
It did what it wanted it to do. Yes, it was probably over contrived, but I don't think it took itself seriously enough for you to really care about it. It was just like it just had lots of characters, lots of broad stroke performances, very cartoony kind of characters, and it was absolutely fine. I had fun with it.
Yeah, again, it's a film I reviewed and spoke highly of without loving. Well, no, that's not true. I think the thing I would liken it to is, although I think it's better as an example of its type, but I think I said about Avatar, it's a 3-star film that some people will think of as a favourite. I think I had this a bit better than that, but the same principle applies. I probably enjoyed it more than it deserved, but it is a lot of fun. The visuals are great, music's great, action's great, humour's great, characters you won't give two shits about, but it's good.
Yeah.
One of the big disappointments of the year for me, just because of the hype around it, was Prey. Now this.
Oh, you not like it?
No, but I didn't hate it either. I was a bit. This is where sometimes I said to you I can concentrate on films at home, and I really can, but I've got to want to, and I've got to be trying to. And I think this was a film I didn't remotely concentrate hard enough on. I should have seen. This film needed to be seen theatrically, particularly as even though they're outdoors because they're in like it's kind of a jungle, I suppose. It's got a claustrophobia to it. It's like, and I thought it was exceptionally well made. I thought the effects were phenomenal for what it was, because it's still, it's not going to get a theatrical release as such to get all the money back, or at least on the models we used to know anyway. And I thought, this is the way to do it. They keep trying to do rinse and repeats or contrasts with the original. So the first one's in a jungle, so the second one, let's try something more sort of urban. And then it's like, well, let's do something similar, but we'll be on their planet instead. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think this was the way to do it. What did you think of it?
I thought it was okay. I think there's something felt very much like it was like an idea for like a 30-minute short that kind of like stretched out, and I think I think they did it well. But
yeah, I suppose you get animated it was a book to start with, but like instead of Batman as a film, you get Gotham by Gaslight, and it's like, what if he was in the time of Jack the Ripper? Yeah. But it's relatively short. You don't make a 2-hour tentpole release out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, but I think that sounds a bit harsh, a criticism. But it kind of felt like it kind of felt like a bit of a what if, even though it's perfectly reasonable for it to be like a timepiece. But it felt very it felt original enough as a concept, but in practice it felt like you just kind of it has a bit of a novelty aspect to it.
Yeah, I think I'd go along with that. I couldn't see me watching it again. Couldn't see me ever having any need to watch it again.
Yeah, but but I didn't have any problems with it while watching it. It was just kind of mostly that. It was just it's like, yeah, I get the idea, and I think it's on paper it's a really solid idea for the series to go forward, but to do these type of things, but to go back to more primeval time, it's like, well, okay, well, you're kind of like regressing, you kind of like doing a little bit of a what if kind of scenario, but it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it.
Talking of streaming, another film I saw, I think this might be Amazon. No, it's not, it's Netflix. I saw a film called Rogue Agent with James Norton, who has been talked about as a possible Bond. How possible that is, I don't know.
Probably not very
now.
If he was, he would be a very Fleming-esque take on it. He's got a very public school air to him. So I think it would be more like a literary type. But he plays basically a con man. He pretends to be like, you don't know this immediately, but he's pretending to be an MI5 agent, and he's getting all these people like incredibly loyal to him, and even having an affairs with some of them. One of them being Gemma Arterton, so there's a Bond link there. And I would just recommend it, just to see what you think of him as a potential name in the frame.
Holly agrees with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to stop her bloody band.
Oh, bless her. Yeah, she's getting a word in edgeways.
Well, she's jealous. She don't actually like me talking to anyone else.
Oh no, Daddy.
Yeah. Oh, God forbid if I try and kiss my wife, she'll just kiss me to death.
New co-host, Holly, the dog.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's really worth watching. But the next cinematic release I wanted to talk about, well, it's not even cinematic. It's actually 2 streaming releases, but I sort of want to talk about 2 of them at the same time. We got 2 releases of Pinocchio this year. Did either of you see either of them?
No, I know the Disney one, because I've seen various clips and I've seen like reviews and people talk about it, and it just strikes me as I want to say a bastardization of the original, like that just completely just gutted everything about it and installed everything that made it completely superfluous.
It's garbage. They've put in a live.
The Disney one, I should say. I don't.
They have put in a live action version of the animated Pinocchio, so he looks strangely uncanny valley, real and animated at the same time. They've cast Tom Hanks as Geppetto on the basis of it's Tom Hanks, but he's completely wrong for the role. He's still probably a bit too young, but even if you bought into that, his accent is wandering all over Europe and America. And they've stuck in these superfluous... It reminded me, because it's also a Robert Zemeckis film, and Robert Zemeckis did a version of A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey. And if you remember that film, he threw in a load of action sequences.
I thought that was quite decent from a technical standpoint, considering the motion capture, etc., etc.
Yeah,
and
this
just
film does the
elasticity
same.
of Jim Carrey.
It basically makes the same film, but sort of changes the end, the last sort of half of the last act, and as a result, the ending. But it's largely Give a Little Whistle's not in it, but it's all the same songs.
Oh.
And it's just utterly superfluous. And what's worse is The Lion King you can watch and go, well, it's visually beautiful, it's roughly the same story. Yes, they're singing Can You Feel the Love Tonight at midday, but fair enough.
It's basically Hamlet.
But you watch this, and it's just like, it's giving you nothing. It's a few minutes longer to add nothing, and the changes it makes are undoing plot points that were done perfectly right the first time round.
I mean, the original Disney film is a classic. I mean, it's one of those things, it's sort of, if you're introducing a young one to Disney, or if you're a fan of Disney, a lot of it perhaps may seem quite scary to a modern audience.
Yeah.
And some of the aspects perhaps haven't aged as well as perhaps it would have done, at the time. But it's certified as a classic for sure. This new version I avoided, but I've seen the Del Toro version recently.
Take us away on that, because that's a different story, isn't it, Becca?
Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, the same. So go and head over to Set the Tape, check out Dave's review. Excellent. I almost enjoyed reading a review as I did the film. Both equally fantastic.
Well, the film was better than my review. They put a bit more effort into it, to be fair. They didn't knock it out in 20 minutes and go, that'll do.
4 stars, yeah, that's fine.
Actually, I gave Guillermo del Toro's a 5-star review.
Yeah, I was gonna say 5-star review actually. If I'd read it properly, sorry about that one, dropped the ball there. Yeah, no, I only saw it recently, so it's kind of still quite fresh. But no, I really enjoyed it. Typical, Del Toro, true visionary, and plus also like kind of stop motion style of animation, which I love. I think if I could do it, I probably would have pursued it in some way, shape, or form as into career, because I try to keep up with sort of animated stuff like that. This year, perhaps I haven't as much, but I generally try to. And plus, you don't kind of see that style of animation very much anymore, or if it is, like with the Lego movies or that kind of style of film, it's or like CGI, for example. Trying to mimic that style very much. But something like this, where you've got like real actual models being made. That's why I've sort of taken interest in things like obviously it's a few years old now, but like Thunderbirds I'll Go, or where still animation stuff like where it kind of blends, or anything new that Anderson Entertainment are working on now, or because it's very much a blend of real sets, puppets, models, and CGI, for example.
And I cried at it.
Yeah,
I cried at it.
Beautifully animated, really beautifully animated, and it's a really touching story as well. I mean, you say, I think we spoke to this maybe offline, and I think you mentioned it in your review as well. Like the opening moments are very similar to Pixar's Up.
Yes.
If you don't shed a tear, your heart is made of stone.
That's where I cried. I didn't cry in any of the rest of the film, to be fair. With Up, I did cry a couple times later on.
But it's beautifully made, beautifully realised. Probably only one of those sort of films that Del Toro could make. Definitely, it's very much his kind of unique vision in the way it kind of looks and feels. My one criticism would be that the songs in it are kind of short and sweet.
It's neither a musical nor not a musical.
No, does it want to be a musical? I don't think
that's the film's one flaw. It wasn't enough to knock any of the stars off, if you like.
There's nothing wrong. All performances are great. All the singing's brilliant.
But it is a flaw.
It's just one of those films where like the songs are perhaps. I mean, there's a lot of them, but it could have done maybe like 2 or 3 really sort of big pieces if it wanted to be a proper musical. But it doesn't really know if it does or doesn't want to be a musical.
At the time, it's not a musical, and occasionally they burst into song.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it, definitely. But it's not a problem. I didn't dislike the film because of it. But no, technical standpoint, utterly brilliant, and it's really refreshing to kind of see this art form, because you don't see it very often these days. Certainly not in sort of Western cinema. I think he's got this. I think he had Nightmare Alley, and also is it Cabinet of Curiosities, the other series that he's got on Netflix. Other streaming platforms, which I've not seen yet, unfortunately, but I hear it's very, very good. I think it's more something that obviously it's films made by the filmmakers and stories written by the other creatives, but it's something that he curates, and then maybe he's contributed 1 or 2 stories. But I need to check that out as well, because that does look excellent. But that's kind of more into sort of like gothic horror, mysterious, sort of darker undertones that he's known more for.
This film feels less like Del Toro going, look at how dark and into creatures I am, though. It's got a darkness to it without. It's not running up. It's not rubbing up against it being a family film, though. It can still work.
It's kind of like a mixture. As if something like The Shape of Water or Pan's Labyrinth, which is really dark and quite nightmarish. But yeah, as I say, it's more edging towards the kind of like PG 13, 12A. If you had to kind of turn it into a family film, maybe one for perhaps the older children. Little ones, I say, still stick. Well, maybe if you can't stick with the Disney cartoon.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some scenes in that now. Like I remember on this is quite a long rambling review. A few years ago now, Channel 4, I think it must have been. Is it Channel 4 or BBC? I can't remember. Went through a period. I think it was over the Easter holiday. Showed a lot of like classic Disney animation. So they had sort of. I think Dumbo was one of them. We were like, this is quite trippy for the time.
Yeah.
And some of, obviously some of the stereotypes, perhaps not like the Crows, for example, now, pun intended, wouldn't fly. And this is kind of before, or maybe it's during that sort of age where you would have a disclaimer of all those films, may contain outdated views and opinions. So obviously everything with caution. But yeah, I mean, this new version of Pinocchio, I think the 2 remakes that we've had recently, Del Toro version is definitely the one to watch. Maybe give the other one a pass by, but the Toro's version definitely. I mean, it's beautifully made, beautiful to look at, strong performances, well written, well directed, obviously by visionary Del Toro. One drawback would be like some of the songs. There's no if you want to be a musical or not, but that's not it's not enough to say no, don't worth it. But don't watch it. 100% worth your time. Do check it out. And for me, again, that's one of the films of the year. for me.
Definitely, yeah.
My list is kind of long,
Yeah.
getting longer and longer.
So can't cover everything I've seen. There's a couple I'll skip over here. So we want to hit some of the big hitters. I know I've done a few smaller ones. Let's move on to Black Adam.
Oh, okay. What do you make of
Oh,
that?
Pierce Brosnan in it.
Yeah,
Pierce
no.
Brosnan's the best thing in it.
But playing
Yeah, he's
not
amazing.
playing not Doctor Strange.
For the sake of full
Yeah,
disclosure, I'm skipping Ticket
not
to
Doctor
Paradise, which is a rom-com with George Clooney my wife wanted to see, but there's really not much to say about it. It does what it says on the tin, and it does it okay. And then I saw a film with Sally Hawkins and Steve Coogan called The Lost King, about the search for the remains of
That was really
Richard
good.
III.
Like, again, that was
Oh,
like
we can
a
talk about it
underdog
if you've seen it.
movie.
I thought it was okay. I don't think it sold why she suddenly became so obsessed with it.
No, I kind of came away because I think you kind of it's one of those films where like it'll give you tell you into it about how how it sort of happened with the rest of it as well.
Yeah.
I like the fantasy sequences. That's quite interesting where she was like talking
She's
to
chatting
Richard
to
and
she's chatting
yeah,
to a young
I
version of
think
King Richard.
the
Yeah.
actor who played him, I forget his name. I'm gonna have to look him up. He's been in a few episodes of Doctor Who, various fantasy sci-fi shows and that as well. He's got quite a distinctive look to him. He does the role very well considering it's also largely a speaking part. Sally Hawkins is fantastic. Whatever she does is just amazing.
She's playing very dowdy here.
Definitely, and I think she's one of these sort of actors who's very much. I mean, she's known for these kind of sorts of films, but she's quite sort of. I don't know how to say it, like a chameleon. Like she can turn her hand to almost every kind of role, and she kind of always fits into it as well. And even because the character has ME and fibre and stuff like that as well, which is kind of similar to what I have. I mean, it's touched upon really, and it's not like a major part of her life, but
She is struggling through ill
it's an
health.
aspect, with health issues, and it's an aspect of her character, and it's something that kind of feels very believable. It's not kind of it's not heaped on, or it's not it's not made to kind of look like it's her fault or that's why she does it or anything like that.
The guy who played the king was Viserys Targaryen in the first series of Game of Thrones. He was blonde. He was basically Daenerys' brother.
He's got a very distinctive.
But he was also in a
features,
couple of episodes of Doctor Who as well, going back a bit.
He was indeed. I think he ended up as a maybe during the David Tennant era. Or, no.
Yes, it would be. It would be looking at the days. Yeah, absolutely.
As Scarecrow, I want to say. Family of Blood, I want to say. A very, very unfortunate end. But yeah, that was pretty cool episode. So yeah, highly recommend that. So yeah, as a Whovian, there's a draw there as well. But again, it was very much typical British underdog kind of story. But yeah, really again based on a true story of how his remains were found under a car park in Leicester.
I tell you what, let's come back to Black Adam. Let's just run through a few smaller films to see if we've seen them and what we want to say about them. Did either of you see Blonde, the Marilyn Monroe film?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I won't say very much about that, except it's a tough watch in a lot of ways. She's miscast, but she's very good.
I heard Anna de Armas was very good in it, and she does look like her, I thought.
She does her best to look like her.
Yeah.
She can pull the same expressions and essay the same look, but she is like the wrong build and wrong ethnicity to a degree, but it works okay.
Holly agrees.
Then I saw a film with called Brian and Charles.
Ah, no, I did see that.
All right.
Because it was screened at Andover Film Club recently, which is a club that I attend. And the original film which that is based is actually on YouTube for free, so go and check that out.
Yeah, you made a short film with it. It's based.
Yeah, it's like 15 or 20
it's
minutes.
Brian
long, it's quite
Gittins.
short.
It's Kev from.
Yeah, it's Kev.
It's Kev from Derek.
From Derek, pretty much. Yeah, it is. Pretty
He
much.
builds his own robot.
Utterly charming. And again, it's one of those typical like underdog stories because like at the end, there's a bit. I mean, spoiler alert, but do check out Brian and Charles, everybody. It's fantastic. It's a real feel-good film. And at the end, he's kind of obviously he builds this robot. He's a lonely inventor in the wilds of Wales somewhere, and he sort of there's a love interest there as well with this lady who sort of lives down the road. He's kind of under the thumb of her mother a little bit, but yeah, so he builds himself a robot. Charles Petrescu.
Yeah, Charles Petrescu, which is like a Romanian name. No, Petrescu is anyway.
And he's got a very particular way of speaking, which I think is genius. And he's made from basically the innards of a washing machine. He looks very strange.
And a mannequin head.
With
some glasses and a hat.
Long arms, but he longs he sort of gains his own consciousnly during a storm one night, and becomes sentient. And he dreams of running away and seeing the world and going to Hawaii,
Yeah,
somewhere
something like that.
Some hot country, and like he makes himself like a grass skirt, and
He becomes rebellious.
he rebels. He's like, no, he's like a teenage boy. He's like, no, I'm not going to do what you want. I'm going to escape and run away. And he's also Brian's also kind of bullied by sort of like a local farmer, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of standoff towards the end of the film. We sort of there's a fight almost, but it's one of those moments where, like, when we saw it with our film club audience, we all went, yes, you know.
It's one of those I saw in a local community centre. It's the sort of thing you get at that sort of fair.
Yeah, it's very much that kind of moviola kind of style, isn't it? And it's a brilliant film. It's quite short. It's like what, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, it's about that.
Yeah, it's very often these films. I mean, we're known as a country. We're kind of known for producing these sort of films, but some of them are quite cheesy, a little bit naff. But some of them, occasionally, a gem will come along, like Brian and Charles, and it is, it's very low budget, very little special effects. Just check it out. Just do go and see it. You can probably pick up the home release quite cheaply. I say the original film, which is based 15-20 minutes. It's on YouTube for free. Go and check it out. And yeah, it's based, it's on Derek as well. But it's
what are they obsessed with? Cauliflowers, isn't it? Is it cauliflowers or cabbages?
Cabbages. Yeah, he's obsessed with cabbages.
Yeah.
Really randomly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, you don't really need to have seen Derek or anything, to get into it. Bizarrely as well, one of our club members, actually I got it for Christmas. There's a book, Kazuo Ishiguro, Clara and the Sun, which is, I think it was on Radio 4 Book at Bedtime or the book club or something like that as well, which deals with sort of similar themes, sort of an AI sort of friend, robot friend. And I received it for Christmas. So I was like, oh, this is quite good. After it was recommended to me. So that's another literary offshoot there that you can check out if you want to, listeners. But yeah, I highly recommend Brian and Charles. Very charming little film and a feel-good film that will have you punching the air at the end.
Okay, so
no, sorry.
sort of skipping a film I saw but don't really want to say much about. Eddie Redmayne and Jessica Chastain, The Good Nurse. This was a true story about a nurse killing his patients, but I don't want to talk about it because it's a how-to guide for Chris.
Oh no, don't do that, Chris, please.
He'd be like, I'd like to try that. Basically,
so that's how you do it.
Sure,
yeah.
Just be like, this is how not to do it.
Basically,
or they leave out
Chris,
vital details.
It's their saline drips you got to go for, all right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
What's that case that's going on here in England at the moment? The nurse who killed all those babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Grim, isn't it?
Horrible.
It is.
It's terrible like that. I just think, oh my gosh.
She didn't even have the good grace to be a bit of a moose.
I mean, the thing is with her though, it's like she's clearly like
she's
demented
crazy.
Psychopath. Like, I think even that those words are just even diminishment to someone who did that, because it's not the fact that she did what she did, it was the fact that she knowingly did it, as well as lying to the parents' faces, saying that, oh, trust me, I'm a nurse, kind of talk.
Yeah, she's in that position of power. He's looking after your children.
Trust me, I'm a nurse. I'm deliberately trying to kill you, but it's just it's just really disturbing shit.
Yeah, it's terrifying, isn't it?
So for a heartwarming version of that fair, dramatised The Good Nurse on Netflix. The Banshees of Inisherin, we're getting quite close up to date now. Did either of you see this?
I saw it, yeah.
This is the same team that did Seven Psychopaths and In Bruges. Same two leads as well.
I went into it a little bit blind because I kind of thought, oh, obviously it's the same. Obviously, it really loved In Bruges, hilarious. And I didn't know too much about. I didn't know it was set at turn of the century. Well, I was set in Ireland, but I didn't realise it was 1900 settings. I thought, oh, maybe it's a follow up to In Bruges or something like that. No, so that was a bit of a surprise to me. And it's also a bit gory.
I thought it was going to be funny like In Bruges, and it is only slightly. It's more whimsical.
It's more kind of dry,
it's very
dry
subtle,
humour.
isn't it?
Subtle, yeah. It's not as over the top. Like Laugh Out Loud, for example. Yeah, it's more subtle humour, definitely, but still really good. I think top performances. Again, one of my top films of the year.
Yeah, two guys on Craggy Island aren't friends anymore. That's
it's
the plot.
Craggy Island.
And it's set about a century ago, something like 1918, 19, something like that.
Yeah, because it's doing.
I'm sure someone described.
There's a wartime setting, isn't there? I think.
Yeah. Like Civil War, isn't it, or some sort of?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some kind of sad scenes, obviously not wartime scenes and everything like that.
The Irish Civil War, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the two central performances are fantastic. I mean, you can't really fault them. I think they're just just amazing in whatever they do, I think.
Okay, just before we go to Black Adam then, 2 more streaming films I've seen recently, All Quiet on the Western Front and See How They Run.
Oh, I saw See How They Run. I need to see All Quiet on the Western Front, but I think that'll be for another day. But yeah, See How They Run, definitely.
Is that the one about the mousetrap, or set around the
See How They Run is,
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell, very knowingly wacky. Somewhat clever, somewhat funny, not as good as you would hope it would be.
It's one of those films where I really enjoyed it. Great ensemble cast. Saoirse Ronan is fantastic. She's amazing. Again, I probably just mangled her name, so sorry about that one.
I don't think you said it right.
It's one of those movies where Saoirse. There we go. Sorry,
you said it right. I think
it's going to be mangled
Becca,
by me, so I can only apologise.
Just say it however you want, but with an Irish accent, it'll be fine.
But it's a disclaimer. I will mangle your name. I'm very sorry. If we ever come to, I'm trying to think if we've got any international cinema type lineup coming soon. I'm just going to mangle. Yeah, when we come to do obviously our.
Oh God, here we go. It's our African movie season.
Oh dear, we're in trouble. Never mind, it's fine.
See How They Run. There's a couple of sequences.
I'm not going to listen. It's all right.
There's a couple of sequences in it, sort of set to the score of the film, bit whimsical, where they're trying to make their way somewhere, and you go, this is like the breaking out of prison in the Grand Budapest Hotel. Some scenes of it. Some scenes, it's not quite as quirky, but some scenes are almost Wes Anderson-ish.
Yeah, I think it could very much be like a Wes Anderson movie. But I enjoyed it. Again, great performances, great ensemble cast. Huge fan of the Mousetrap as well. Classic Agatha Christie play. Go and check it out if you can on the stage. Not giving away the ending. It's the only one they have.
I thought like this film kind of played around with that too much for my liking. I mean, it didn't sort of ruin the Mousetrap, but I was like, you're kind of playing with fire here. Really like
they mess too much with the classics.
Well, I mean they don't in the end, but I think you're kind of, there was a bit like midway through of like you're toying with a bit here. Are you about to do something blasphemous?
That's it. I mean, it is essentially, it does end up being one of those sort of Christie-esque country house kind of murder mysteries almost, and it's one of those things where like it'll kind of it keeps you guessing up to a point. But if you're familiar with Mousetrap, familiar with Christie, then you know which way it's going to go. I saw this at the cinema, and then obviously it came out
Disney Plus
shortly after on Disney Plus, because it's Fox. And I was like, well, it's very TV film is my bottom line. But again, great performances. Sam Rockwell hilarious, Saoirse Ronan hilarious. Just a great cast definitely, but maybe one for the small screen for sure. Yeah,
All Quiet on the Western Front, conversely, I found extremely impressive. Don't think I'd ever want to watch it again. It's relentlessly grim. It really does put you into the thick of it. And I've got a lot more to say about it because I was so taken up. This might be a knock on the film, or maybe it might be praise for the film. I don't know which it is. I was so taken up with how authentic it felt. I don't remember much of the story, but it was relentlessly grim look at life in the trenches in World War One. Another thing I saw very recently, and I'm trying to think, did I see it on a download or a stream? I promise we'll do Black Adam next. They've made a new Fletch.
Every time I say that, I think you're going to say Black Adam. I was like, what's
that
got to do with it?
No, they've made a new Fletch film with John Hamm.
I didn't know that till it was out. I was like, oh really?
Yeah, it's a fucking blast. It's brilliant.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it good?
Yeah.
I need to check it out.
Thing is, I don't very much remember much about the original Fletch films now. But like he sort of ends up fingered for a murder. He's sort of an ex-investigative reporter now, but he's keen to tell everyone what a successful and brilliant investigative reporter he was. He's in some relationship. He goes to sort of stay at a house in America because he's living elsewhere, and like finds a body and he's holding the murder weapon. So far so cliched, but it's really funny. And he's like trying to get involved with the local police, and they're finding him extraordinarily irritating. And there's all this sort of cast of quirky characters because you got is it his mother-in-law? I think it's his. I can't remember if it's his father's like wife, or a colleague's wife, and whatever it is. There's a real I think it's his girlfriend's mother, and she's a really sort of eccentric Sicilian type who thinks she's like super attractive and that he must want to sleep with her. And it's worth checking out. It's really funny. And John Hamm wears the role like a glove. It's really good.
Jam.
Oh, okay. Because I was never like, I don't think I've properly seen the Fletch movies.
Yeah. Well,
So-
Chevy Chase can be a bit
Yeah.
much. But yeah. Black Adam. Come on then. What do we reckon of this?
So Pierce Brosnan as
He's the best thing in it.
as not Doctor Strange. Because he's very Doctor Strange-like, isn't he?
Yeah, it's sort of cheap cosplay strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
I am going to say though, he was the best thing in it.
yeah, probably.
Mm.
It's strange how Pierce Brosnan's like career's taken off since Bond.
Yeah.
It's
He's
amazing,
kinda-
isn't it? It's
kinda
He
amazing.
went through a
It's like he's
period
having
of
this,
this
like,
direct to
second life.
DVD shit, didn't he?
Mm.
You know, all these films where he's holding a gun on the cover or something, and you just know it'll be shite.
Stuff like, or like these spy thrillers like November Man.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. They're never any good.
No.
But
It was okay.
yeah, but okay is not good, is it? That's what I mean. It's the
He made
best
that
thing.
film, obviously not like a Bond spoof or anything, but he made that film where like he was basically like terrorizing a family on the end of a phone. That was a bit scary. Obviously Bond, obviously Bros in a villainous type role.
No, but I mean, he was a bit of an anti-hero in the Tailor of Panama, which he was very good in.
Yeah.
But the thing with Black Adam is, this has now been even more hurt by the fact that we think, this could date badly if I say we know, we think this continuity is all coming to an end, right? Whether they're able to soft reboot and keep elements, or I don't know. So he's spent years putting this Black Adam thing together. His name's always been attached to it. It long predated Shazam being talked about. It ran through different directors and all the rest of it. Then the end result comes out. The opening scene of the film spoilt it, because I could see from the side that the character that we thought was him, it's a different character that's him. That was spoiled at the start. I saw it straight away. And then all of it just looks like semi-cheaply made. Everything looks like a set, even though they're in a city. And the plot is a bit so fucking what. And he is somewhat playing a dour version of himself. And I just think, like, this doesn't... I was entertained for the time I was with it. I found all the beats very predictable. But at the end of the film, I was like, this is already dead. There's nothing more in this, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thought the Fonz was an aging superhero?
Yeah, there is
This is it.
there is a little cameo from Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. Oh my
I
god.
mean, I think one of the surprises is, and in a way, it's kind of an odd way to go. It's with the Pierce Brosnan and all that. No, was it the Justice
Society.
Yeah. It's like I wasn't expecting to have a team of superheroes as well injected into this movie.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, oh, this is a bit of a surprise, but
I thought the lead woman was pretty good because she was on the screen a lot. By good, I mean fit.
She had screen time.
Yeah, I like she's kind of fit. That was all I meant. Like a bit of a yummy mummy. No, the film was just unremarkable in every way, but that doesn't mean it was bad.
Yeah. What was she in before? I reckon I remember like, oh yeah, she was in that.
She's got a slight Morena Baccarin air to her. She isn't,
yes.
but Morena Baccarin, who was in like five years ago in Homeland and Deadpool and all that, she's got that sort of quality.
Yeah, she was in Person of Interest. That's why.
Okay.
She did a lot of TV. That's why. Yeah.
Basically, if Morena Baccarin and like Eva Longoria like bred, it would be something like this. But it was just unremarkable in every way, and a lot of it was sort of around this child who was fine, and the story was fine, and the overall plot was fine. You get the picture, but I'm not screaming for a sequel to it. And of course, they threw in a Henry Cavill. I've got to judge it as I saw it at the time. We didn't know Cavill was out at the time, but obviously they were They had Amanda Waller and Henry Cavill's Superman, and it was like he's going to be part of this universe now. And it was like, fine, but I mean, how many wildly overpowered people do you need? Because he is wildly overpowered, and it's okay. It's kind of nice they've gone to a different part of the world rather than another sort of stand-in for Metropolis or Gotham. It's got a different colour palette to it, although it's very sandy, and that can add to a slight feeling of artifice sometimes. But it's just unremarkable. It's not even bad. It's just unremarkable.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. I could tell it probably had a few production issues. I think it's probably had a load of stuff that's been cut or reshot.
Yeah.
To make a more of a basic, generic.
It's very basic, yeah.
So which you know what, I'm happy with.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's nice after like trying to throw in too much or try to be too different. Sometimes just basic is a nice sort of, right,
Yeah.
I was fine with that. But then again, it didn't blow me away. I think one of the things that kind of I was a bit unsure about is kind of how the humour played, because The Rock is playing it, or I say Dwayne Johnson he's playing it kind of very kind of almost like emotionless.
He's playing it. He's going for stoic. He's actually largely hit bland most of the time.
And it's sometimes the humour doesn't quite land. I'm thinking most of the stuff of like where he's supposed to sort of tell the man in black sent you.
Yeah.
I like how he's like, oh, I should have said that before, shouldn't I? Or like, or whatever it was.
Oh, he's trying to learn like it's very like John Connor trying to teach the Terminator.
Yeah.
And I didn't like. I mean, Terminator 2 is a fine film. I know I'm harder on it than most because I prefer the first one, but that sort of interplay between John Connor thematically works because they're supposed to be bonding, but in the individual beats you're like, Christ, a grown man write that dialogue. And I was a bit like that with this, but then I did sort of try to give those things passes, because if you look at Shazam is a boy as a superhero. And I thought maybe this is aimed at wish fulfillment for younger viewers. I don't know. But even then it would become tonally quite inconsistent, because he's quite violent at the start, isn't he?
Yeah,
It doesn't need a higher rating. I don't mean that. I just think thematically and his behaviour, if you like, is darker than like kids' wish fulfillment film.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the point, isn't it? He's supposed to be kind of like what if Superman just didn't give a fuck and just kill people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you send out a girl with a baseball bat. We learned that in a previous film.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but she's crazy. So.
So that's a superpower. She's a bit mad.
Yeah.
And she's got and she knows basic medicine.
Yes. Psychology and everything.
Yeah.
So
I'm on the final three on my list. If anyone wants to add anything. A couple of films that are sure to be Oscar bait, and I'm not convinced either of them work particularly well. I saw David O. Russell's Amsterdam, and the most damning thing I can say about that is I saw it on Boxing Day and I can't tell you what happens in it.
Okay.
Other than Christian Bale's playing a guy who got badly injured in the war and is now helping soldiers. There's a character in Boardwalk Empire like it, who's got like a proto-prosthetic on his face to cover like a load of damage. He's doing that sort of thing.
Has he got like a glass eye or something?
Yeah, he's got a glass eye. And
I
Margot
saw the
Robbie...
trailers for that film. I kind of get the impression that... I haven't seen it.
I'm reminding
I think
myself of it now.
It's on Disney Plus.
It is now,
it's on streaming site.
Yeah.
I kind of get the impression like the cast look incredible, but I kind of got the impression that the cast is better than the film. I'm sure that's not the case.
No, it is the case. The cast is much better than the film, and it's better than. David O. Russell's batting average is better than this film as well. So
yeah, because he's quite an impressive director as well. He's got some good films to his name.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, I'm trying to remind myself about the film now. John David Washington and Margot Robbie meet and spend time together in Amsterdam. John David Washington and Margot Robbie become a couple. Eventually, she's a nurse, so she treats Bale for his injuries in the war. And eventually he goes back to his estranged wife in America and starts treating people. and it's all stuff around that, and it's rather, it's nice in its details, it's well made, but it's just, like I say, 4 days on, and I'm like, what happened again? Yeah, so that's not great. But the other Oscar bait film I saw was She Said. Now this is is it Kerry Mulligan film?
Yeah, I did
Is
see this.
Is this about Weinstein?
About the Me Too.
This is the Weinstein film. Now it's funny I've just mentioned
Yeah,
Margot
so
Robbie.
it's basically like All the President's Men, but for the Me Too generation, about Weinstein and how it came about, or Spotlight, one of those sort of films.
No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's Bombshell.
Bombshell, that's the other one.
It's
Yeah.
Bombshell. It's very similar
better.
film. The only
Well,
Difference
Bombshell was a
is
bad film.
Bombshell was the cast. I suppose it is fucking made up, isn't it? Fox News. That was all about Bill O'Reilly and the treatment of women who worked for Fox and stuff like that, and
And this is
basically
obviously Weinstein.
and Roger, whatever he was called, who run the station, who was getting sexual favours from women to get on air. This is about Weinstein, and it's exactly the same type of film. It's sort of, in that case, it's from the perspective of the journalists, the real
Yeah,
journalists
I would say
who
it's
did
kind of, it's like the Post or Spotlight.
It is.
Or All the President's Men.
I think
but
it's.
for
I think
the
it's.
Me Too movement, definitely.
I think it might be the New York Times, because it definitely isn't the. It definitely isn't the Washington Post, because that would have stood out, because All the President's Men was that, and so.
No, but I'd say it's very much, obviously it's not of that kind of thing, but it's very much of that kind of, telling the true story about a movement, how it came about, sort of thing. But that's the kind of film that it did cool in terms of its technical standpoint as well, and camera angles and how it told the story. That's kind of what it reminded me of.
Did you see it? Did you like it?
I did. Yes, I did. Yes and yes. Yeah, it's one of those. Obviously, being female as well. But kind of how. Because I kind of thought, oh, this is going to be quite staged, it's going to be quite, quite heavy, quite boring. But it was told in quite a really interesting way, definitely. And obviously based on all those kind of first-hand, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, first-hand excerpts. And of how it's one of those films where
it's very first-hand, because you've got
first-hand
somebody.
accounts is the word I was looking for.
You've got Ashley Judd playing herself.
Precisely, exactly. And I was just, when she popped out, I was thinking, how the hell? Because obviously, when it all kind of broke out, there was a lot of backlash. You can't talk about this, and he's obviously a very respected man, in the industry, and we've reviewed his films on our show, unfortunately, or not his film, but like from the studio, and it's kind of one of these things that only came out sort of after the fact, only came out sort of very very recently, and there was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of people didn't want to go on the record, as it were, but just in terms of its kind of sheer the sort of two leads, the sheer bloody mindedness, the journalism kind of really helped to bring it all all to the fore. And so because we've been treated in this way, we're going to make a stand about it, and we are going to go on the record, as it were. And it all sort of came about. It was perhaps so aspects of it could have been told a little bit more dynamically, but it just goes to kind of echo the sheer doggedness of how they really kind of got these women to come forward and to speak, and to kind of try to make their voices heard, and it's obviously had powerful legal repercussions. But I would say it's very much, it's not as not as great as those ones, but it's kind of it's up there with them. For me, it's in that kind of particular type of filmmaking that tells about how a true story, how that kind of story came to light, really. All the leads are fantastic, and something like Ashley Judd, for example, I was thinking, how did she? I just think it was amazing that he managed to get her in the film and play herself and tell that story.
And the Rose McGowan voice is uncanny, because that isn't Rose McGowan. It's
scary, isn't it? I was like, is it really Rose McGowan? Oh my gosh! Blah, blah, blah. She's well known as well, especially making like the Scream films and things like that as well. And she was trying to make a name for herself in Hollywood at the time, and it just had sort of career in tatters, due to it. And a lot of these women as well wanted to speak up, and obviously they were silenced immediately. But yeah, no, I mean, it's not. Obviously, Me Too has come out and become this big movement. But I don't, unlike, as I say, like the Post and All the President's Men, that's kind of obviously not where it came from. This film it's not a catalyst for another movement. Obviously, we've always had this, like obviously the telling of the Me Too movement. But I think in that style of filmmaking, how it's made, it's very much, for me, it's kind of on that, in that same way of filmmaking. Like if you enjoyed films like The Post, and obviously it's a different story because that's about Vietnam War, and Watergate and that sort of thing. But if you enjoyed those films, then you were like Bombshell, you were like She Said, and other films of that political ilk. So that's why, for me, it's very much in the prism of those type of films, even though that's not the catalyst for what happened, So
It's walking a fine line, because
yeah,
my first thought.
you see what I'm trying to say, can't
No,
you?
well, you find yourself almost editing yourself because you don't want to give the wrong impression. So I'm going to have a go at explaining this. My thought when I was watching the film was this needs to be a lot more hard-hitting and a bit less earnest than it is. Then I thought, if you made this harder hitting, what am I asking? For it to be more prurient? So it got its points across fairly well, but only in the same way that Bombshell did.
Well, both are still quite powerful films, though, isn't it? Even though it's not kind of like where it came from, but I think that's kind of why it's.
Spotlight did it better. Well. Spotlight did it better, in my opinion.
And also, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's just something that exposes, something that we kind of know was going on for a long time, but again, nobody wants to come forward. Like with the Spotlight, for example, the church and various things did cover up a massive operation. A lot of the victims didn't want to speak out. And of course, it also is after, it was sort of young men, young boys, or perhaps, men that kind of had been quite young when it happened. There's obviously a gender difference there as well. I think, I know that's broad brushstrokes, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying that. But especially in this age as well, where perhaps we're a little bit more aware of its woe. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But you've got to be careful there as well. But I think it kind of wears its earnestness on its sleeve as well. And yeah, I think that's probably why it's but I would say it's probably one of the most kind of important films of the year to come out about a really important subject. That's still having repercussions in Hollywood today, for sure.
It's Hollywood shining a light on itself as well, which it's not very good at doing normally. So it's kind of brave from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, bravery is a really important word. It's one that kind of tossed around quite a lot, certainly in the last couple of years. But definitely, excuse me, my croaky throat. But yeah, it's probably one of the most important films of the year. But it is quite sort of dogged in its depiction. And some scenes can be a little bit staid because it's almost documentary style in some aspects. There's a lot of people sitting around at tables having meetings or on the phone. Some very outdated technology. It's just kind of when smartphones were sort of just taking off. Some people with flip phones or really old kind of laptops that perhaps we don't see these days. So that was quite interesting from that point of view. Or certain very fashions that were very much of the time, these sort of mid 2000s, which is quite interesting. And some great cameo roles there, as Dave mentioned. But yeah, as I say, it's kind of more.
Oh, the Trump voice was incredible as well.
That was some really great impressions. I was sort of like, so I heard that and I was like, that's not Donald Trump, surely not.
No, it's not. He didn't. He wouldn't join this, would he?
I was like, yeah, excuse me, Mr. Trump, do you want to come and be ridiculed in this film? No, I do not. He'll be like, I just hear this.
Say that thing for us about all those women are fucking liars. Can you do it for a movie?
Excuse me, will you just say this line and we'll play it forever? No, I think it's incredible. Like I said, the cameo roles that they got, some of the impressions, that they got, and that's very brave as well, because I'm sure they must have incurred the wrath of said people that they're impersonating. And obviously, it's one of those films that tells you afterwards about the fallout of the movement and that sort of thing as well, and kind of what happened.
I suppose as well, there's still live cases around him.
It doesn't have the impact to say, like, All the President's Men, or how that really sort of came about. But the story is told in, what I mean to say by using those two sort of films is it's told in very much that kind of style.
Definitely, it's that type of film.
It's along those lines. If you enjoyed those, you'll enjoy this.
Sorry, if I was to be pessimistic about like films like these,
Prison's Pessimistic Corner.
Yes. Would this be kind of example?
Is there any fruit in this corner, or is it a different? Does he have to travel to a different corner for this bit?
Maybe like an overly ripe, like, banana that's gone like sort of brown and probably a bit mushy at the end.
Yeah.
Make some bread with that one.
Yeah. Yes.
Make some banana bread as we ordered during lockdown.
Is this like an example of Hollywood essentially sort of, right? Let's just shine a spotlight on Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, and let's just like brush everything else under the carpet. Like, right, we'll make an example of him because he's like caught and tried now. We'll sort of like kind of do
problem solved.
Yeah,
Yes,
problem solved.
kind
Yeah,
of
we made
thing.
this film about it. We kind
Like,
of shone a
it's
light on our seedy underbelly,
it's
and
like,
everything else is
oh,
fine.
it's like, oh, one of our own's got like caught out. Oh, okay, well, let's put like let's make an example of him and pretend that no one else notices everything else.
I suppose, given it's so close to the events, maybe, or so close to the end of it all. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I've not seen the film, but does the film kind of like does that?
Well, no, because it's not the only thing I can say in answer to that is conceptually making the film. Yeah, quite possibly, because there'll still be executives in place who were in place when all this sort of shit was going on. If you were making it 20 years afterwards, maybe. But in terms of the way the film is structured, it's not Hollywood trying to clean house. It's outside trying to clean Hollywood. And people within Hollywood who are scared for their futures speaking up, who essentially have no power. Because we're talking about actors and actresses who had names but not power. They're not Tom Cruise, they're Rose McGowan. She's got Ashley Judd. They are still where they are to some degree. Their talent and work, I don't mean anything other than that. But whether they continue to make movies is the largesse of others. So them speaking up is dangerous.
But like Rose McGowan is probably not going to get work anyway.
No, she's not.
Regardless of like, well, you know.
And I think she was. I think she was. I'm going to burn this village down. Yes, but Ashley Judd still had an active career. She might be a little bit past her young lady peak, but she's still looking for interesting and to keep interesting work and to keep busy. So
no, she'd made quite a few like films of very different genres and different characters as well. Wasn't she like? She didn't try to pigeonhole herself into one particular genre.
Well, she's quite good at playing Ashley Judd. I would say that. I was absolutely convinced it was her.
What was that? I want to say Kiss the Girls. It might not have been Kiss the Girls. Well, there's one of those.
She was in Kiss the Girls.
James Patterson adaptations.
Well, you had Kiss the Girls and Along Came the Spider. Which was the first one? Kiss the Girls. She was in the first one.
Was she in that? I'm
she
pretty
was
sure.
in the first one, yeah.
Yeah, she kicked butt in that.
Yeah.
So that's like my one standout.
And then the year after, she made Double Jeopardy. That was when she was at her peak commercially.
Yeah, those two films are probably like, if you want to go for two good Ashley Judd movies, those are the ones.
Although Double Jeopardy makes no fucking sense whatsoever. But
no, it's all a bit.
It's
but she's really good in it. So
yeah.
That's all that matters. But yeah, so I just totally, because I had totally forgot that she was affected by it all. And then, oh my god, turn that off. Sorry. My TV's been on the whole time, so if you hear extra noise,
we haven't heard anything. You're all right. I'm trying to think who else spoke up. I mean, a lot of the people who spoke up were like aides or bystanders or assistants, and they obviously had to risk it all and speak out. Yeah, and also that you do have people who are like representing Weinstein, and they're having to admit certain things, and it's the spin they're having to put on it, and then eventually they are broken down to we can't really hide this anymore. We've been caught, but at no point does Hollywood genuinely come across as right. We've cleaned house now, because it is kind of dragged out of them, isn't it, Becca?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do sort of feel that's probably my one criticism. I think that'll probably be my tagline at some point. Yeah, it goes a little bit too long, a little like my rambling reviews. Drag on a little bit too much. But yeah, no, I'd say it's again one of those quite important films that they came out of the year. And I think it's kind of not Hollywood drawing a line, but as you say, it's them kind of sort of looking at it. It's okay, we made this film about it. Not that everything's okay or such, but just holding their hand up, admitting, but just telling the story of what happened and the lasting effects of the Me Too movement, why it came about, how it came about. It just tried to kind of catch it all, with a wider net as possible. But I think some very brave performances, bold choices, sort of strong cast as well.
The two female leads, actually, Carey Mulligan is the name, but she's the blander of the two of them.
No, well, both are really brilliant.
I think the other one's the stronger. I think Carey Mulligan gives the sort of performance thingy from fucking Harry Potter would give.
Oh.
The woman, what's she called? Emma, whatever she's called, Watson.
Watson.
Yeah, like it's on the surface, perfectly competent actor, but my God, she's trying quite hard here. Whereas the other one is just very, very natural. The other lead's stronger. Can't think of her
I
name
think
now. I'll look it up.
equally they're both, sort of fantastic. But it's one of those things, isn't it? It's just because it is. I don't think it probably will be as iconic as Up There with like All the President's
No,
Men,
it
or
definitely will not.
that kind of style of film. But it's just kind of made very much in that vein.
Zoe
but
Kazan. Zoe Kazan. She's the strongest thing in the film.
Definitely. But for me, it's definitely one that's the most important films to come out this year.
Brilliant
what else have we
cameos.
seen
Brilliant
before we round out the
cameos
show?
from Jennifer Reilly and Samantha Morton as well. We haven't mentioned them. They're both
gosh.
superb.
Incredible. Again, some very, very brave choices. A chance for them to kind of, share their side of it. Yeah, what else have we seen before we round out the end
All
of
right. Well, we can't do a fruit corner, but I'll tell you what. I can do a vegetable one.
Vegetable corner, okay.
Glass onion.
Oh yeah, of course. How can we forget glass onion? Oh my
Let's
gosh.
finish on that because it's out.
Was
Right,
it
let's
sharp?
check it
Eh?
Was it sharp?
Well,
Was it sharp?
a lot of glass went everywhere.
out.
At
Lots
one
of
point.
layers.
Layers, yeah.
Did you have something in your eye? And if you cut an onion, it makes you cry or something
Well,
like
no,
that.
I know that, but they had to put something in their eyes to simulate tears at one point. Have either of you seen it?
No.
I watched it the other night actually.
So
Might
we
watch
both
it
seen.
tomorrow.
I meant to watch it over Christmas, but then I didn't.
Okay, so I
watched
don't
it
want to
the other night
spoil
instead.
anything, so I don't want to say very much. So I'll just give you a few headlines.
Daniel Craig is amazing.
In the way the film is introduced and set up, Knives Out is stronger. Knives Out has a better first act.
What?
I just think it's
I
very.
think I enjoyed Glass Onion more.
It's a bit.
Knives Out is fantastic.
Getting them to the island is a bit more contrived. Couple of other negatives I noticed, and I'm not going to be negative about this film. I'm just going to lay you out the couple of things I thought were a bit more negative at the start. One is the vast majority of the action does take place in one room. I mean, you do see them outside and in the pool and everything else, but largely it's in one big open area. And I don't think that... I like the change of scene in Knives Out a bit more. Also, in Knives Out, you get many more scenes of actors talking to each other without Benoit Blanc there. So you get whole sequences where you see how the family relate to each other, and you see less of that in this film. If I were to talk about the plot... I mean, I've watched it twice now, and everything means something. Every line of dialogue is setting something up or telling you something. There are shots that you see where you actually see what you see it one way, but then you think you've seen it a different way. So I think it's about as clever as the first film. I think it's a little bit more contrived. I think the casting is very similar. I think Janelle plays, she's equally she's kind of the equal of Ana de Armas, but Ana de Armas plays a little bit younger in that film. So and she's a nurse, so you got her a bit more on your side.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she? I didn't realise that. Obviously, she plays kind of maybe like 17, 18 or something like that. Or she was always like early 20s or something. I mean,
Ana de Armas is in her 30s now. She's about 34.
Yeah, this is it. Well, she's played
so she was
a bit
about
younger than what
30
she actually is. I mean,
well,
she's
she
very
seemed
youthful.
it. She had to be a qualified nurse, so I guess not. But she seemed
No, definitely.
younger.
But she seems a lot younger, definitely. But yeah, she's amazing.
I found the first films set up a little better. I found its sort of variety of shots and scenes a little better. I found the interplay and therefore the primary cast without the detective and their interplay more interesting. But the plot here is at least the equal. So if
it's literally like you have to peel away the layers, isn't it?
For me, if Knives Out's a 5-star film, this is a 4-star film. I liked it a lot.
6-star film. I think Knives Out is fantastic, and it's one of my favourite sort of films, and especially as we mentioned. So is it Death of the Nile remake? Did that come out this year as well? Or was that last year? I think that was this year.
What?
That's at the Death of the Nile remake.
That came out early this year.
Yeah, so that's at the other end of the scale. That's at the should not have done end of the scale. But whereas this is just I think once you get over, for a lot of us, certainly the JBR group that went to go and see it, we had that big hurdle of trying to get over Daniel Craig's accent. But now, he's settled into the role. He has been more blunt. I would quite happily go and see a whole series of films.
Yes, as would I.
It's fantastic. He just has the most amazing wardrobe. And there are a lot of callbacks to, obviously, Death on the Nile as well. If you read Evil Under the Sun, that was the right one. Check out some of Michael Connell's posts on kind of the look of the film as well, in terms of the costumes. There's a lot of Cary Grant in there. There's a lot of To Catch a Thief in there. There's a lot of Hitchcock in there, definitely by many broad strokes. For me, you have to kind of get over the hurdle with his accent.
Yeah.
But I think if Ryan Johnson can assemble these kind of the scale of these casts, I think for me, aside from Daniel Craig, Monet was probably the best thing in it as well, playing two very different roles.
I saw virtually no one in not like Knives Out. I've seen overwhelmingly positive praise for this, but I've actually seen a couple of people didn't like it.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, they're always going to be compared, aren't they?
This is getting a few more brickbats, but there's not a lot between them. Like I say, the cast of characters assembled for the first film, not necessarily the performances, just the characters are a little bit better.
I wonder because there's probably more bigger names, haven't you? Because you've got Captain America, you've got Jamie Lee Curtis, you've got more sort of heavy hitters. I mean, not but they might still be
Edward Norton's a fairly big names hitter.
In this one, you've still got some big names, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, Ed Norton is fantastic. He's kind of like this worse than Elon Musk, if such a thing is possible.
I'm still working out my review because I've got to write it tomorrow, so it's forming in my mind as I'm doing it. It is overwhelmingly positive, but if I had to say something,
I can feel it's going to be a 4-star.
Yeah, I'm going to say it will be. I've decided already, but I'm saying that if I had to sum it up with one negative quote that compares it to the first one felt like a more organic story. This feels like an elaborate game of Cluedo. This feels like one big puzzle to solve, and that's all it feels like.
Much.
Whereas Knives Out's just got a little bit more to it in the family circumstances and stuff, because effectively they've all got a relationship with Edward Norton's character. And their relationship with him, although they want different things from him, their relationship to him is all pretty identical. They all have the same, we need something from this guy. Whereas in Knives Out, they all had a very different relationship between them with Christopher Plummer's character.
Yeah, it's the same but different. I mean, they have the Agatha Christie series on the BBC over the Christmas time, and today I think they had Witness for the Prosecution and Murder on the Orient Express, which is amazing. Plot spoiler, they all did it, but it's like, for me, it's aside from the Branagh version, it's like it's the OG adaptation, and for me, it calls back to that sort of classic sort of murder mystery. I mean, they all want the same thing, but they have sort of like different relationships as well, but you sort of peel back those layers like you do with the glass onion. Try not to pick yourself.
It's at least as funny as the first film. It's probably funnier, actually.
Definitely, yeah, it's funny. It's a lot wittier as well. Like the cameo roles right at the start of the film, like the fact that he's forever in the bath. It actually reminded me a little bit of a character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, really randomly. Which was just unexpected, I'm sure, and it probably wasn't intentional at all. Just something that I thought of. And just like the costumes are incredible. I wonder if, to some sort of critics and reviewers, there might be something wrong when you start to notice, that's an interesting costume, and you start to think more about that because it takes you away from the world of the film. But for me, it kind of adds very much to it, I think. But I think perhaps it has kind of more. I would say the first film perhaps has bigger names, perhaps. Not they're all like nobodies, but they're all still well-known names.
Fractionally.
It's kind of mini Bond reunion because you've got Mr. Hinks as well.
Where you had Anna de Armas, but that was stopped before, to be fair.
Sure, no, that's fine. It's a very tenuous link.
Did you notice one of the policemen from the first film is in this film?
Yeah.
Did you notice it was the same guy?
Same chap.
There's one character in the film who has absolutely no impact on the plot whatsoever.
Yeah, he did.
And he deliberately has no impact?
No, he just randomly appears. So I kind of thought, is there an alternate ending where he was the killer or something?
And it was the same guy who was a big Harlan Thrombey fanboy in the first film.
Yeah, it was that guy. I thought, I wonder if he's going to pop up again. And he might, if there's a third or fourth or whatever, if Ryan Johnson decides to make a series, which I hope he does.
He's his John Ratzenberger.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically pops up as the same character. It's so random, but yeah, there's lots of little throwaway lines. I think the script, for me, I would say it's as good as, if not better. The script is definitely wittier. It's funnier. There's more laugh out loud lines. It's very
the amount of rewrites were incredible because every line means something. The amount of reverse engineering in a good way that would have had to have been done.
Well, it's the kind of film where you probably have to write it backwards. I mean, I don't know his process at all, but I would imagine if you're writing a murder mystery, you start off with dead person and you probably point it backwards. I don't know. It must be so hard.
It must be so nerve-wracking as well, because you'll shoot bits for early in the film and you're thinking, am I being too obvious? And of
Definitely.
course, when you watch it, it's like you wouldn't notice it at all, because you don't realise that sentence means something.
No, that's it. It's not until, well, unless you are super sharp and you pick it up like first time round. It's one of those films, especially with Knives Out as well, that it kind of does give a lot more on repeated viewing. Pardon me. That's not to insult anyone's intelligence or anything like that, but I find it does. Some films you watch them once and think, yeah, right, that's it. I'm never going to see that again. And then others have like massive rewatchability. Definitely. Just
I'll
for
watch both again many times. I will.
For
I do
sure.
enjoy
Yeah.
them very much.
Yeah. Same as would I. Definitely. Hugely enjoyed it. Yeah. If you can catch a listener, do go and check it out. Double bill with Knives Out for sure, and you'll have an absolute whale of a time. And yeah, just get over the hurdle of.
Don't double bill Avatar though. Who's got 6 hours?
Oh, Jesus. I think I know.
Or double bill Avatar with one of the Glass Onion or Knives Out movies. That'll be interesting.
2 completely different films, like Oil and Water. I think at the Prince Charles Cinema, I think sometime in January, they're doing the Lord of the Rings extended edition. I want to say the marathon.
Difference is that's one film.
Jesus.
That's one film in 3.
Yeah, that's going to be a long one. Going to be a long one.
We're covering them in 2023.
That's going to be a bottom number.
Yeah, I remember when a few of us from JBR went to go and do the Bond marathon at the time. I think they showed 6 films. In where were we? Were we upstairs or down? I think we were upstairs.
That was my first question. But which floor were you on?
Well, you got 2. You got the upstairs screen and the downstairs screen. And the upstairs screen is very nice because it's got very comfy seats. But the downstairs is a very nice cinema of Prince Charles. But it's a bit of a flea pit. But it's very lovely.
A lot of cinemas around centre of London are pretty.
I don't ever like that, but it's.
I love that what Becca's effectively said there, if she's honest, is Prince Charles is lovely, but it's shit.
No, it's not shit. It's just. It's upstairs and it was a bit nicer than it's downstairs, but still, the seats are very comfy.
I mean, I've never heard flea pit as a compliment.
well,
you don't see that, do you? Well-appointed flea pit available.
As something similar, so I'm backpedaling.
A studio flea pit available, £175,000.
No, it's a bit more market flea pit, definitely. But no, just because the seats are comfier upstairs, which is really hard because obviously we were trying to stay awake. Whilst Casino Royale sort of kind of unfolding, and I think it kind of we all struggled towards the end of it. So anyway, whilst we were all watching the Bond films upstairs, brave hobbits were doing the Lord of the Rings trilogy downstairs, and I think both by the end of it we were all a little bit like the following morning we were looking equally haggard.
Yeah.
But we survived,
Well, the Lord of the Rings, obviously, we're just looking ahead to next year. We're covering the Lord of the Rings. Well, our next series, we're in the midst of some westerns at the moment, but our next series, and we'll keep Charlie on for this, is Tolkien. So we're going to be doing the 1978 Bakshi film. Charlie may suggest 1 or 2 other things to add, but at the moment that's what's in our head, and then we'll do the release order of the Peter Jackson films. Now, of course, when you're prepping for them, certainly I'll be watching both versions and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of it. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait, actually. I must confess I've not seen them in a long time, but I'm looking forward to getting into the animated series, definitely.
It's a shame because they're actually perfect movies to watch around Christmas, I think, as well.
Making a long journey just to
my wife's working tonight. I'll sling them on now, then.
Yeah. So so that's the Glass Onion. Is that the last movie?
It's the last one I've got down. Yeah.
Because
I didn't even do a list. I totally forgot to do a list. Apologies. I just chimed in saying, "Oh, I've seen that," or "I haven't seen that."
So I think we covered most things. To talk about Knives Out, I'll just say I wasn't that enamored by it. I'm probably like one of the few people who wasn't the biggest fan. I don't know. I just found it kind of a bit too clever for its own good.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean, it's kind of.
See, what we need is really dumb murder mysteries where the detective gets there, spends 2 hours, and then just goes, I don't know.
That's not what I mean. I mean, like, and to be honest, by listening to you guys talk about it, I'm like, all right, clearly it's both great, like Glass Onion and that, but listening, I'm thinking this sounds like it's had so much thought put into it that like it just disappears up its own arse. Surely, I mean, like it's that, you know what I mean? It feels like it's that like complex, but that every inch things thought out and everything's all twisty or turny. That it's like, is this thought about every inch of his life that it just becomes nonsensical? You know, I mean,
well, the funny thing is, it's given the illusion of twist and turn. Actually, everything you're told is reasonably straight.
Yeah, I'll go into it with open mind. Yeah, I sound like I'm prejudging it.
Yeah, but nothing's for everyone. I was having a conversation with someone today who hated the Batman. You know, it's like, well, we're all different.
It's just because I'm into sort of prestige murder mystery stuff like that.
Burger mysteries.
Burger mysteries, yeah, very delicious.
He turns up 2 hours later, no idea who did it, but he's had a lovely burger.
And it's not even a veggie burger.
And you know what? You can't beat a good burger. It's probably one of the best meals you probably have.
Well,
most delicious burger, definitely.
What better way to look back on 2022?
It was a good burger.
Speaking of good burgers, and that's the only reference I'll make to it. One of the movies, my surprises movie of the year, which you've not mentioned, I don't know if any of you guys heard of it. The Menu. Have you guys heard?
I haven't seen that. No, apparently it's really good though.
I had tickets to see it twice. One time I couldn't get there. And the second time I got there, it was like roadworks and everything else. And I got in there. I just had one of those days, right, where everything went wrong. And I actually got into the car park and I lightly dinked the car. And when I got out, I hadn't done any damage, right? But it was enough for me to go, fuck it, and drive home.
Oh no, epic journey.
So it was just one of those that it doesn't feel meant to be. So I'll get a rip soon. I've not seen it. I'm meant to see it. And I had tickets to see it. This is Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy in her film debut, probably.
She's literally, I feel like 2021, 2022 has been the year of Anya Taylor-Joy.
Well, my favourite film of last year was Last Night in Soho, and that was hers.
Yeah, amazing, incredible. Yeah, I kind of feel like the last couple of years has totally been, the year for her. You can't really escape her. It's not a problem. She's fantastic.
She's just got like such a defining look to her, doesn't she?
She does, doesn't she?
Oh, we did mention she was the lead woman in The Northman as well. Yeah. I may
so this year has definitely been her year, 2021, 2022.
I will say, so the Menu is my pleasant surprise of the year. I went into it not knowing too much about it really. I was thinking it was going to be more satirical, kind of like.
The trailers made it look like a horror.
Yeah, well,
I wondered that.
I hadn't seen any trailers, so I just went by the basic premise of like.
Is it a bit like League of Gentlemen, where?
No, not.
Or Soylent Green, where the people they're eating the food. People are eating human meat or something like that.
So the premise is.
No spoiler with that, but it looks fantastic.
You basically got Ralph Fiennes, who's this like high top class chef who lives and works at this restaurant in this remote island off the coast of somewhere.
Not much passing trade then.
Yeah, but he's that like well known established like that that highly wealthy people go to that island to eat there kind of thing. It's like and you've got basically three like rich kind of young yuppies. You've got like John Leguizamo as a fading movie star who's like dumb and arrogant at the same time. You've got a couple who go there who are regulars to this island, and you've got Nicholas Hoult who plays essentially like a foodie. He's a bit of a fanboy of Ralph Fiennes' character, and he's bringing on like this new date, Anya Taylor-Joy, who is a last minute addition to
the Menu.
Yes, essentially. So
I just had this vibe that like they end up eating people. So, I was like, oh.
No, it doesn't go that way. But it's equally bonkers. It is like I mean, because I wasn't expecting it to go like all dark and horror.
Should you go in on an empty stomach, or can I watch it as a vegetarian person?
You can. I mean, I'll be honest. At the end of it, that's what I mean. I was craving a really good burger. It's like that's one of the nicest. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it too much because it's very satirical. It's very odd. I'm not sure whether it'll quite hang together on a second rewatch. It's either I'm either going to watch it and think that's one of my favourite films, or I'm like, it didn't quite hang. But the first viewing was like I was generally like. I wasn't quite expecting this. I think I'm quite. It's quite enjoyable in a kind of like really off, weird, sick kind of way. So I'd highly recommend. I'm not going to say too much because if you don't know anything about it or you don't know too much about it, I'm not going to ruin it for you. But it is very like it's very satirical, dark, fun, I would say. And yeah, so I'd highly recommend it. And yeah, so that's my.
I've been looking for a
one.
download for a while, to be quite honest about it. I haven't seen one yet.
Yeah,
I will do, because I missed it.
It should be out soon though. I'm sure thought there'll be some.
There will be.
VD release date for it. I'm
Yeah.
sure. Oh, no, hang on. A Blu-ray and DVD release on January 17th, so it's not going to be too long.
Oh, well, I'll rent it then.
Oh, cool.
Oh, film released on digital platforms on the 3rd of January the 3rd. So,
Awesome. I'll have
so
that
yeah.
then.
So that's my recommendation.
I'll be watching that next week then.
The only other thing is The King's Man, which I suppose technically came out last year, but
I saw it last year.
yeah.
That's why it wasn't in my list. But yeah,
Yeah. I think I rewatched it as well because
it got slaughtered.
what in reviews.
Yeah, generally.
I thought it was I don't think that's quite fair then.
I liked it.
Because I thought it was better than the second Kingsman film.
Yes.
Wasn't it on streaming as well? I want to say.
Yeah,
Disney
it went
Plus or-
Disney Plus. Yeah, it's on
Is it,
Disney
that
Plus
was it?
now.
Yeah, that's
It
where
is
I
on
saw
Disney
it as
Plus
well.
now. I'd forgotten it was there, but it is.
I enjoyed it
I
more
liked
than
it
the
more.
second film.
I really didn't like the second one, to be fair, though. But I
No.
loved the first, and I quite liked this one. There were things I
first
didn't
film,
like
brilliant.
about it, but I liked it.
And
Second film middling, and then the second film, this third film, brilliant. I thought. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
did you notice the similarities in terms of like plot points? Because what I noticed was spoiler alert is when the son gets shot at the head is kind of like the similar part where
Oh yeah,
Colin
it's got a
Firth
similar
gets
beat.
Yeah,
shot in the head, same kind of like slow motion, same
Yeah.
kind of like poignant moment.
yeah.
I thought, that's
Like,
quite
we've seen this before.
yes.
I think
But-
I saw it around Christmas.
But they are
last year.
both completely different films, both different in vibe and
I liked it, but
they
sometimes
both work well.
it cuts both ways as well. I didn't really like No Way Home, the Spider-Man film, and everyone wanked off over it. So we're all different, and occasionally, I saw someone whose opinion I respect tonight. Really, not yours because you haven't seen it yet, not because I don't respect your opinion. You haven't seen it yet. But Glass Onion, I saw someone tonight just saying how awful it was, and it's like, well, you just got to stay true to what you think. I liked it, and I thought The King's Man was alright. I didn't think it was a great film, but I liked it.
It was enjoyable. It's a good romp.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one. And the Menu, I really recommend that one. As
Yeah.
not saying it's the best film ever.
No, it's the
but
one I meant to get to though.
It's definitely one worth catching because it's quite interesting and fun and in a satirical kind of way.
Okay, cool. Well, that's 2022 done. I doubt we'll do yearly reviews every year because we've kind of had to race through this one, but we'll see. In terms of next year, like I say, we haven't worked out the entire schedule yet, but we can promise you Tolkien is on it.
Coming soon.
Coming soon, lots and lots of walking. So,
To return some jewellery. And we also will bust out those those really terrible impressions
What?
of Andy Serkis. Oh my gosh.
Oh God, can you do a Gollum? Can you?
Yeah, we'll have to brush off our Gollum impressions.
Okay. I don't think I could do that without ripping my throat to shreds.
Yeah, I can't do it at the moment, but I probably can try. Probably not right now, but yeah.
Does
I
it
can
sound
try.
like, what's your name? Gollum. First name, I don't know.
I don't know. No, it doesn't. No.
my precious.
Yeah.
I can do that, but I'll do it in a silly voice. But yeah, when I'm not full of horrible cold and lurgy, I'll try and do an impression. It's terrible, but it's funny. Makes me laugh.
All right, well, this was a little bonus episode, folks, and we've already announced the next one on one of our canon episodes, so I'm just going to say you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinetronics on Twitter, where you can find all find all the episodes on cinetronics.co.uk. We're on Podbean as well.
If you randomly want to follow me on Twitter, this is probably the only time I'll ever give it out. It's _view movies. Although I do keep threatening to abandon Twitter at some point.
Yeah,
go
but she's been
elsewhere.
threatening for years, so I'm not too worried.
I have been, so I probably won't do that. But if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can. Highly recommend it. It's a pleasant experience. It's at Expect Us to Talk on Twitter. But you can find us across social media. And we're on 99.9% of all the major podcast platforms. So wherever you pick your pods from, just type in Do You Expect Us to Talk, you'll find us on there. Do check us out wherever you listen to us, wherever you get your pods from. Don't forget to kindly leave us a 5-star glowing review and a nice rating. Helps us to rank higher, tickle those algorithms a little bit and attract more listeners. Likewise, when we've figured the schedule a little bit more of the coming year, we'll announce it and let us know what films we're covering. We'll let you know what films we're covering. If there's a series of films you'd like us to do, please get in touch. You can drop us an email at expecttotalk@gmail.com. You can tweet us, you can find us on Facebook. Do let us know what you'd like us to review, if anything. Thank you.
Alright folks, I'm just going to sign off by saying Happy New Year everyone. Thank you for all your support this year. Apologies for the delay. There will be delays this year, that's just the way we are, but thank you for sticking with us for nearly 8 years now.
Oh my gosh, that's frightening, isn't it? But yes, thank you so much everybody, really appreciate all your support and love. Hopefully you'll be with us for the next 8 years and beyond. But yeah, hope everyone had really happy holidays, and I wish everybody a happy, healthy and successful 2023 and beyond.
Happy New Year.